The sound of my mother-in-law's palm connecting with my son's face is something I will never forget. It was sharp, sudden, a crack that split the air like a branch snapping in winter. Ethan gasped, his small body lurching sideways, and before I could move, before I could even process what I had just witnessed, Margaret Monroe was screaming words that would end her family forever. "He is not real family. Get out." My 8-year-old hit the floor. The plate in his hands shattered against the hardwood, green beans scattering like shrapnel across the dining room. 15 adults sat frozen around the Thanksgiving table. No one moved. No one spoke. My husband Daniel stood by the window, mouth open but silent. His sister Victoria looked away, pretending to check her phone. His father Robert stared at his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. The only sound was the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, counting the seconds of my son's humiliation. I did not scream. I did not cry. I crossed the room, knelt beside Ethan, and helped him to his feet. Then I walked back to the table, reached into my bag, and placed a single envelope in front of my mother-in-law. My lawyer is already involved. I said those 6 words quietly, calmly, like I was commenting on the weather. Margaret's plate slipped from her fingers and crashed to the floor. The room stopped breathing. For a moment, Margaret just stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Her hands, those perfectly manicured hands with diamonds glittering on every finger, trembled as she reached for it. I did not wait for her to open it. I already knew what was inside, and soon enough, so would she. I looked around the room, reading every face, filing away every reaction. Daniel had gone pale, his jaw tight, but he still had not moved from his spot by the window. 38 years of conditioning had frozen him in place. He was not agreeing with what his mother had done. He simply did not know how to disagree with her. He never had. Victoria finally looked up from her phone, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was already thinking about what this meant for her position in the family hierarchy. Robert, my father-in-law, was the only one who looked ashamed. But shame without action is just performance, and Robert had been performing for 40 years. Margaret's voice cut through the silence, trying to regain control the way she always did. "This is a family matter. You are making a scene." I almost laughed. Making a scene. My son was on the floor with a red mark blooming across his cheek, and I was the one making a scene. That was classic Margaret. Reframed the cruelty as someone else's overreaction. She turned to Daniel, her voice sharp with command. "Daniel, control your wife." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He could not even look at his son. I turned my attention to Ethan. He was standing now, but barely. His hands hung at his sides, and he was looking at me with those wide brown eyes, searching my face for answers I did not have yet. The red mark on his left cheek was already darkening. A green bean was stuck to his sweater. But he was not crying. That was what scared me most. 8 years old, and he had already learned that crying did not help, that tears did not change anything in this family. I knelt in front of him, checking his face gently. His skin was hot where the slap had landed. When I touched his cheek, he flinched. Not from pain, from expectation. He whispered something so quiet I almost missed it. "I am sorry, Mom. I did not mean to sit there." My heart cracked right down the middle. He was apologizing. He was apologizing for being hit. I stood up, lifting him with me. I grabbed my purse, his jacket, my coat. 3 years. I had spent 3 years swallowing insults, ignoring slights, smiling through holidays where my son was treated like a guest who had overstayed his welcome. The slap was not the beginning, it was the end. I had made my decision weeks ago. Tonight just confirmed it. I carried Ethan toward the front door. The family finally unfroze, their voices chasing us like startled birds. Margaret's voice rose above the rest. "You cannot just leave. We have not even had dessert," Victoria chimed in, dripping with false concern. "Jessica, do not be dramatic." One of the aunts added her piece. "Think about Daniel. Think about the family." I did not respond to any of them. I just kept walking, holding my son, feeling his small body trembling against mine. Daniel finally moved. He followed us to the foyer, his footsteps uncertain, his voice pleading. "Jessica, wait, let us talk about this." I turned to face my husband. I really looked at him, maybe for the first time in years. He was still handsome, still the man I had fallen in love with. But right now, he was also the man who had watched his mother assault our child and done nothing. "You had a chance to talk." I said it quietly so only he could hear. "You had a chance to move. You chose neither." His face crumpled, but he did not follow us outside. He stood in the doorway, caught between his mother's house and his family walking away. That image would stay with me forever. Daniel Monroe, frozen on the threshold, unable to choose. The November air hit my face like cold water, sharp and clarifying. Ethan buried his face in my neck, his breath coming in uneven bursts against my skin. I strapped him into his car seat, my hands steady even though everything inside me was shaking. Before I closed his door, he asked in a small voice, "Are we coming back?" I paused. I thought about lying, about softening the blow. Then I decided against it. My son deserved the truth, even when it hurt. No, baby, we are not. The drive home was silent except for the hum of the heater. Ethan sat in the back, hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead like the windshield was showing him a movie only he could see. Streetlights slid across his face in bands of yellow and shadow. His cheek was swelling now, the skin tight and shiny. But he did not mention it. He did not mention anything. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Daniel, Margaret, Victoria, numbers I did not recognize. I silenced the phone and placed it face down in the cup holder. Ethan noticed. "Is Dad calling?" "Yes." "Are you going to answer?" "Not tonight." I thought about the envelope I had left behind. 3 weeks ago, I found out about the trust fund. 3 weeks ago, I hired Emily Carter, the best estate litigation attorney in Philadelphia. 3 weeks ago, I stopped hoping Margaret would change. Tonight was supposed to be a test. One last chance for this family to prove me wrong. They failed. We pulled into our driveway. The house was dark. We were supposed to be at Margaret's until 9 o'clock. It was barely 6:30. I helped Ethan out of the car, carried him inside even though he was getting too big for it. He let me. That told me everything about how scared he was. I ran a warm bath, examined his cheek in the better light of the bathroom. The mark was darker now, purpling at the edges. You could almost see the shape of Margaret's fingers. I took photographs with my phone. Different angles, better lighting. Evidence. Ethan watched me do it. "Why are you taking pictures?" "Just in case, sweetheart." He did not ask in case of what. He understood more than any 8-year-old should. Later, I tucked him into bed. He was wearing his favorite pajamas, the ones with rockets on them. He looked so small against the pillows, so fragile. I was about to turn off the light when he spoke. "Mom, am I not real family?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I sat on the edge of his bed and took his hands in mine. "You are the realest thing in my life. You are my family, always." He searched my face, weighing the promise the way children do when they have been let down before. Then he nodded once, slow and deliberate, like he was filing my answer away for later. I stayed until he fell asleep, watching his chest rise and fall, making a silent promise. No one would ever make him feel this way again. After Ethan's breathing steadied into the rhythm of sleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table. My phone showed 23 missed calls and 47 text messages. I did not read any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder Emily Carter had sent me last week. Inside were documents that would change everything. The original trust, signed by Harold Monroe, Daniel's grandfather, 6 months before his death. The list of beneficiaries: Emma Monroe, Tyler Monroe, and Ethan James Wilson Monroe. My son's name, right there in black and white. Harold had included him. Harold had wanted him protected. Then I opened the second document, the amended trust, dated 3 months after Harold's death. Ethan's name? Gone. Scratched off like he had never existed. And at the bottom, the signature of the woman who had erased him. Margaret Monroe, trustee. I scrolled through the bank statements Emily had obtained. $153,000. That was Ethan's share of the trust, gone, redirected, spent on kitchen renovations and a new Lexus and expenses that had nothing to do with any grandchild's education. Margaret had not just slapped my son tonight. She had been robbing him for over a year. I stared at the numbers on the screen. Tomorrow the real fight would begin. But tonight, I let myself feel one thing clearly. They thought I would stay silent forever. They thought I would keep swallowing the insults, keep smiling through the cruelty, keep teaching my son that belonging was something he had to earn from people who would never give it. They were wrong. Margaret Monroe had no idea what she had awakened when she raised her hand against my child, but she was about to find out. I sat outside Ethan's bedroom door for almost an hour after he fell asleep. I told myself I was just checking on him, making sure his breathing stayed steady, watching for signs of nightmares. But the truth was simpler. I could not make myself move. The house felt too quiet, too empty without Daniel in it. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like an accusation. Eventually, I forced myself to stand and walk to the kitchen. The coffee I made went cold in my hands while I stared at my phone. The 47 text messages from earlier had multiplied to 89. I scrolled through them, my stomach turning with each one. Margaret's message sat at the top, all capital letters. "This is ridiculous. Come back and apologize." Victoria had added her piece. "You are tearing this family apart." And Daniel, my husband, the man who had watched his mother slap our son and done nothing, had sent a series of increasingly desperate texts. "Please pick up. We need to talk. Mom is upset. Mom is upset." I read those 3 words over and over, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not once did anyone ask if Ethan was okay. Not once did anyone acknowledge the slap, the fall, the small body hitting the hardwood floor. Margaret was upset. That was what mattered to this family. My phone rang. Daniel again. I answered this time, my voice flat. His words came rushing out before I could speak. "Jess, please, just come back. We can work this out." I stared at the dark window, my reflection ghostly in the glass. "Is your mother going to apologize?" A long pause. "She says Ethan provoked her. He took Emma's seat." My blood went cold. "He is 8 years old, Daniel." He sat in a chair. I know, but if we could just talk about this, maybe smooth things over." I hung up without saying goodbye. There was nothing left to say. I poured myself a glass of wine I did not drink, just held it while the memories came flooding back. 3 years ago, I had been so hopeful. A single mom who had finally found love again. Daniel was kind, patient with Ethan, everything I thought I needed. He seemed like an answer to prayers I had stopped praying. When he proposed, I thought my life was finally falling into place. I had no idea what I was walking into. The first time I met Margaret, she smiled at me with teeth that did not reach her eyes. Her first question was not about me, not about how Daniel and I met, not about our plans for the future. She looked at Ethan, who was hiding behind my legs, and asked in a voice like polished steel, "And where is his real father?" I should have known then. I should have seen the warning signs written across her face like a roadmap to disaster. But I was in love, and I wanted so badly for it to work. Daniel said she was like that with everyone at first. He promised she would warm up. She never did. The slights started small. So small I could almost convince myself I was imagining them. Family dinners where Ethan was seated at a separate table, alone, while the other children sat with the adults. Birthday cards for Emma and Tyler, but nothing for Ethan. Family photographs taken conveniently when Ethan and I happened to be in the bathroom or getting something from the car. Each time I mentioned it to Daniel, he had an explanation ready. She is old-fashioned. She does not mean it that way. Just give her time. I gave her 3 years. Time ran out last night. I walked to Ethan's bedroom door and watched him sleep from the hallway. In the dim light from the nightlight, I could see the curve of his cheek, the gentle rise and fall of his small chest. I noticed things I had tried not to see before. How small he made himself in groups, pulling his shoulders in like he was trying to take up less space. How he always waited to be invited before joining anything, never assuming he was welcome. How he never asked for seconds at Margaret's table, even when I knew he was still hungry. How he had learned to read a room before entering it, scanning for threats the way a soldier scans for enemy fire. 8 years old, and already an expert at disappearing. Last Christmas played through my mind like a movie I could not stop watching. We were at Margaret's house for the gift exchange. The tree was enormous, professionally decorated, dripping with gold and crystal. Emma unwrapped her gift first. A brand new iPad, the latest model, wrapped in shiny paper with a bow as big as her head. Tyler went next. A gaming console, the one every kid had been begging for all year. Then it was Ethan's turn. He opened his gift carefully, the way he did everything in that house. Careful not to make a mess. Careful not to draw too much attention. Inside was a $20 gift card to a store he had never been to, for products he had no use for. He smiled and said thank you because I had taught him manners. But in the car going home, his voice so small I could barely hear it over the engine, he asked, "Mom, did I do something wrong?" I lied to him. I told him no, that Margaret just did not know him as well yet, that things would get better. I hated myself for that lie. And I hated myself even more for believing it might somehow become true. 2 months ago, I noticed the photo wall at Margaret's house for the first time. Really noticed it. 47 framed photographs lined the hallway, a shrine to the Monroe family legacy. Emma's first steps, Tyler's baseball games, Daniel's college graduation, Christmases and birthdays and summer vacations, all documented in matching silver frames. I counted every single one. 47 photographs. Ethan appeared in none of them. 3 years of holidays, 3 years of gatherings, and not a single picture of my son on that wall. When I mentioned it to Daniel, he waved it off. Mom is just slow to update the frames. But the newest photograph was from last month. Emma's school picture, perfectly framed, perfectly hung. Margaret was not slow. She was deliberate. I must have dozed off at the kitchen table because when I opened my eyes, gray dawn light was seeping through the windows. My neck ached and my coffee was cold. I had never made it to bed. I checked on Ethan first. He was already awake, sitting up in bed, staring at the wall like he could see something written there that no one else could read. The bruise on his cheek had turned purple overnight, ugly and dark against his pale skin. He did not look at me when I came in. I made pancakes, his favorite, and set them in front of him at the kitchen table. He ate 3 bites and pushed the rest around his plate, making shapes in the syrup. Finally, he asked the question I had been dreading. "Is Dad coming home?" My chest tightened. "I do not know, baby." Ethan nodded, like he had expected that answer. His voice was matter of fact, the way children sound when they have already accepted something adults are still fighting against. "It is okay. I know he has to take care of his mom, 8 years old, already making excuses for the adults who kept failing him." After breakfast, I asked to see his cheek in better light. He tilted his face up obediently, too used to being examined, inspected, assessed. The bruise was the size of Margaret's palm. You could almost see the individual finger marks pressed into his skin like a signature. I took more photographs, different angles, better lighting. Ethan watched me with those old eyes of his. "Why are you taking pictures? Just in case, sweetheart." He did not ask in case of what. He just nodded and touched his own cheek, gently, like he was checking to make sure it was still there. Then he asked me something that nearly broke me in half. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always, baby." When Grandma said I am not real family? What does that mean? I knelt in front of him, took his hands in mine. It means she is wrong, Ethan. It means she does not understand what family really is. He considered this, his forehead wrinkling with thought. But Dad is her real son, and Emma is her real granddaughter, and I am just... He could not finish the sentence. He did not have the words for what he was. I pulled him into a hug so tight I was afraid I might hurt him. You are my real son. You are Daniel's real stepson. You are real, Ethan, more real than anyone in that room last night. His tears came then, finally, soaking through my shirt. The tears he had been holding back since the moment Margaret's hand connected with his face. Then why does it hurt so much? I did not have an answer, because the truth was, it hurt because he had started to believe them. Somewhere along the way, over 3 years of exclusion and slights and being treated like a guest in his own family, my son had started to believe he did not belong. Mid-morning, I heard a car in the driveway. Daniel's sedan pulled in, and I watched from the window as he sat there for a long moment before getting out. He looked like he had not slept either. Dark circles under his eyes, shirt wrinkled like he had spent the night in it. Because he had. He had stayed at his mother's house while his son cried himself to sleep. He came inside, and I felt nothing. That scared me more than anything else. I should have felt relief or anger or something. Instead, there was just emptiness. His excuses started before he even reached the kitchen. Jess, I am sorry I did not come home last night. Mom was a mess, and I had to calm her down. I cut him off. Where is Ethan's apology? He blinked. What? Your mother hit our son. Where is her apology? Silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. Finally, Daniel ran his hand through his hair, that nervous gesture he always made when he was about to disappoint me. She is not going to apologize. She thinks she was justified. Justified? In slapping an 8-year-old? He could not meet my eyes. She says he was disrespectful, that he knows the seating arrangement. I laughed, and the sound surprised us both. Hollow, bitter, nothing like humor. There is no seating arrangement, Daniel. There is just your mother deciding our son is not worthy of sitting at her table. He did not argue. He knew it was true. I stood up and faced my husband. You stood there. You watched her hit him. You said nothing. His eyes filled with tears. I know, I was in shock. You were not in shock. You were obedient. The word landed like another slap. Daniel flinched. That is not fair. Neither is letting your mother abuse your child. The word hung in the air between us. Abuse. Neither of us took it back. Daniel sat down heavily, put his head in his hands. You do not understand what she is like, what she has always been like. Then tell me. For the first time in our marriage, he did. He told me about growing up under Margaret's control. She decided everything, his clothes, his friends, his college, his career, even his girlfriends. He told me about his older brother Marcus, who tried to break free. Marcus married a woman Margaret did not approve of, a black woman named Keisha. Margaret gave him an ultimatum: the family or the marriage. Marcus chose his wife. Within a month, Margaret had erased him completely. Photos removed from the walls. Name never spoken. Inheritance revoked. Daniel was 15 years old when he watched his brother become a ghost. He learned the lesson Margaret intended. Obedience meant survival. I asked Daniel once if he could call Marcus. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Mom said if I did, I would be next. He looked at me with something raw and broken in his eyes. I have spent my whole life trying not to become Marcus. I have been so afraid of her that I forgot to ask if Marcus was actually wrong. I went to the window, looked out at our quiet street. I filed legal papers, Daniel, before Thanksgiving. He looked up sharply. What? I found out about the trust fund, what she did to Ethan's inheritance. What she has been doing to all of you. He went pale. How did you find out? It does not matter. What matters is I am not stopping. I am going to court." Daniel stood up, crossed to where I was standing. "If you do this, she will destroy us. She will cut me off. Cut us off. Then you have a choice to make. Your mother or your family." I watched his face. The fear, the conditioning, the love for me and Ethan battling underneath. "I cannot answer that right now." I nodded slowly. "Then sleep in the guest room until you can." He opened his mouth, closed it again, and walked away. I heard the guest room door click shut. Then I noticed movement in the hallway. Ethan was standing there in his pajamas, watching. He had heard everything. Our eyes met, and he did not ask if Dad had chosen us. He already knew the answer. At least for tonight, Daniel had chosen fear. But tomorrow, I would choose war. I woke on the couch, still in yesterday's clothes, my neck stiff and my mouth dry. Gray morning light filtered through the curtains, and for a moment I did not remember why I was not in my bed. Then it all came back. The slap, the silence. Daniel choosing the guest room because he could not choose me. The house was quiet. I checked the hallway. The guest room door was still closed. Daniel had not emerged. I did not know if he had slept at all, but I was not going to knock to find out. I had more important things to do this morning than coddle a grown man who could not stand up to his mother. I checked on Ethan first. He was still asleep, his face turned toward the wall, the bruise on his cheek dark against the white pillowcase. I watched his chest rise and fall for a long moment, reassuring myself that he was safe, that he was here, that no one could hurt him in this house. Then I walked to the kitchen and made coffee I desperately needed. My laptop was still open on the table from last night. I refreshed my email, and my heart jumped when I saw a new message from Emily Carter, time-stamped 6:47 in the morning. The subject line read, "Additional documents recovered. Please review immediately." Emily had been working through the night. I clicked the message open with trembling hands. Multiple PDF attachments waited for me. Bank statements, transfer records, amended trust documents, and one file that made my breath catch. original_trust_Harold_Monroe_2019.pdf. I downloaded everything. But before I read any of it, I let myself remember the man who had created this trust in the first place. The only Monroe who had ever truly loved my son. 18 months ago, before Harold got sick, there was a family barbecue at Margaret's house. The usual tension hung in the air like smoke from the grill. The adults clustered in groups, talking about money and real estate and other people's failures. The children, Emma and Tyler, ran across the manicured lawn playing some game that Ethan had not been invited to join. I found my son sitting alone on the back porch steps, his chin in his hands, watching the other kids with an expression too old for his face. I was about to go to him when someone else got there first. An old man lowered himself carefully onto the step beside Ethan, groaning a little with the effort. Harold Monroe was 81 years old, Daniel's grandfather, and until that moment I had barely exchanged more than pleasantries with him. He was always quiet at family gatherings, overshadowed by Margaret's commanding presence, content to sit in corners and observe. I watched from the kitchen window as Harold asked Ethan something. My son's face changed. The careful blankness melted away, replaced by something I rarely saw at these events: animation, interest. He was actually talking, not just giving polite one-word answers, but really talking. Harold laughed at something Ethan said, a genuine laugh that crinkled his whole face. Then Harold's voice carried through the open window, clear enough for me to hear. "You know what, son? You remind me of myself at your age." Ethan looked up at him. "Really? Really? We are the quiet ones. The ones who watch and listen. People underestimate us." Harold paused, and his next words would stay with me forever. But that is their mistake, not ours. After the barbecue, as we were loading into the car, Ethan tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, is Grandpa Harold my grandpa too?" I did not know how to answer. In this family, the rules about who belonged to whom were written in invisible ink that only Margaret could read. But Harold answered for me. He had appeared behind us, moving quietly for such an old man, and he put a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Any child in this family is my grandchild. Blood does not make family, son. Love does." From inside the house, Margaret's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Harold, stop filling his head with nonsense." Harold winked at Ethan. "Do not listen to her. She has been wrong about most things for 60 years. It was the first time I ever saw my son laugh at a family gathering. 6 months after that barbecue, Harold was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Months to live, not years. The family gathered at Margaret's house to discuss arrangements, but I noticed something that made my stomach turn. Margaret was not asking about doctors or treatments or how to make Harold comfortable. She was asking about the will, about the trust, about who would manage things after he was gone. The man was not even dead yet, and she was already counting his money. I started bringing Ethan to visit Harold in the hospital. Margaret tried to stop us. "He needs rest," she said. Not children running around making noise. But Harold overruled her, his voice weak but firm. "Let the boy in. He is the only one who does not treat me like I am already dead." Those visits became our weekly ritual. Ethan would climb into the chair beside Harold's bed and read to him. Adventure stories, fantasy books, whatever Ethan was into that week. Harold would lie back with his eyes closed and a smile on his face, listening to my son's voice fill the sterile room with dragons and heroes and happy endings. One afternoon, Harold asked me to stay behind after Ethan went to get a snack from the vending machine. His voice was weaker than usual, but his eyes were sharp. "I need you to do something for me. Anything," I said. And I meant it. Protect that boy. His words hit me like a weight. "After I am gone, Margaret will try to erase him, the way she erases anyone who does not fit her picture of what this family should be. I will not let her," I promised. Harold squeezed my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "I know. That is why I made sure he is protected. Legally." I did not understand what he meant then. I do now. Harold passed 14 months ago, peacefully, in his sleep, at home. I learned about it through a text message from Daniel. "Grandpa is gone." 3 words, no phone call, no warning. Ethan cried for 3 days straight. He had lost the only person in the Monroe family who had ever made him feel like he belonged. Margaret did not call to offer comfort. She was too busy planning the funeral. A funeral where Ethan was seated in the back row, so far from the family section that he might as well have been a stranger off the street. 1 week after the funeral, the family gathered at a lawyer's office for the reading of the will. I was not invited. I heard about it secondhand from Daniel when he came home that evening. "Grandpa left a trust fund for the grandkids' education," he told me. "Mom is managing it until they turn 18. My heart lifted for a moment. Is Ethan included? Daniel hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. "I think so. Mom said she would handle the details." That was the last time anyone mentioned the trust fund to me. For 14 months, I assumed everything was being handled properly. I trusted Daniel's family. That was my mistake. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I was cleaning out a closet when I found a box of Daniel's old papers. Receipts, tax documents, the kind of things people shove in boxes and forget about. At the bottom was an envelope I had never seen before. It was from a law firm addressed to all trust beneficiaries, dated 1 month after Harold's death. The envelope had never been opened. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a letter summarizing the Harold Monroe Educational Trust. The initial funding was listed at $460,000. And there, printed clearly in black ink, was the list of beneficiaries. Emma Monroe, Tyler Monroe, Ethan Monroe. My son's name was right there. Harold had included him. Officially, legally, deliberately. The letter also noted that Margaret Monroe had been appointed temporary trustee and that annual statements would be sent to all beneficiaries' guardians. I had never received a statement. Not one in 14 months. Not a single piece of paper acknowledging that my son had any stake in this trust at all. I searched for estate lawyers that afternoon. Emily Carter's name came up first. Specialist in trust litigation. 15 years of experience. I called her office and explained the situation as calmly as I could. I think my mother-in-law stole my son's inheritance. That is a serious accusation, Emily said. What evidence do you have? A letter that says my son is a beneficiary, and 14 months of silence. Send me everything you have, she said. I will start digging. I sent her the letter that same day. What she found was worse than anything I had imagined. Now, sitting at my kitchen table the morning after Thanksgiving, I opened Emily's new attachments. The first document was the original trust. Harold's signature at the bottom. Ethan's name clearly listed among the beneficiaries. Equal shares. 1/3 each. At the time of Harold's death, the trust was worth $460,000. Ethan's share came to approximately $153,000. The second document made my blood run cold. It was an amended trust, dated 3 months after Harold's death. Ethan's name had been removed from the beneficiary list. His share had been redistributed to Emma and Tyler. The reason given was a single line that felt like a slap to the face. Beneficiary not of direct bloodline. Harold's original trust had no bloodline requirement. Margaret had added that language herself, and at the bottom of the amendment, 2 signatures. Margaret Monroe as trustee, and Victoria Monroe as witness. Victoria knew. She had known all along. The third attachment was a series of bank statements for the trust account. I scrolled through 14 months of transactions, my fury building with every line. $42,000 withdrawn for Emma's private school tuition, but the actual tuition was only $19,000. The extra $23,000 had gone to Margaret's personal checking account. $35,000 for property maintenance. I pulled up a contractor's invoice Emily had found. Margaret's kitchen renovation, paid directly from the trust. $28,000 for a vehicle purchase. A Lexus SUV, registered in Margaret's name. $18,000 for an emergency family fund with no documentation whatsoever. Various smaller withdrawals totaling another $12,000. Dinners, travel, clothing, all logged as beneficiary enrichment activities. I did the math 3 times, hoping I had made an error. The original trust held $460,000. The current balance was $12,418. Margaret had spent $447,000 of her grandchildren's inheritance on herself. And my son, the boy she claimed was not real family, had received nothing. Emily's note at the bottom of the email confirmed what I already knew. This is textbook breach of fiduciary duty. She amended the trust without proper legal authority. She made withdrawals for personal use. She deliberately excluded a named beneficiary. This is not just unethical, Jessica. It is fraud. I stared at that word. Fraud. Margaret had not just excluded Ethan from her family, she had stolen his future. I was so absorbed in the documents that I did not hear footsteps behind me. Daniel's voice made me jump. "What are you reading?" I turned. He stood in the kitchen doorway, unshaven, exhausted, still in yesterday's wrinkled clothes. His eyes went to the laptop screen, to the legal documents displayed there. He crossed the room and read over my shoulder, his face going white. "Where did you get these?" His voice was barely a whisper. "From a lawyer, Harold's original lawyer, the one your mother apparently forgot to mention." He scrolled through the bank statements, the amended trust, the evidence of theft laid out in black and white. I did not know it was this bad. I looked at him. "Did you know it all?" He could not meet my eyes. That was answer enough. I closed the laptop. "Your mother stole $150,000 from our son. Your sister witnessed the documents. Your whole family stayed silent." I stood and faced him. "And you never once asked to see the paperwork." Daniel's voice cracked. "Jess, I did not think she would actually—" I did not let him finish. "I do not want an explanation. I want to know one thing." I waited until he met my eyes. "Are you going to help me get it back, or are you going to stand in my way?" The kitchen clock ticked in the silence. Daniel did not answer, but tomorrow I would not need him to. I had the evidence now. And Margaret Monroe had no idea what was coming for her. I woke early the morning after confronting Daniel, having barely slept at all. My mind had been racing through documents and numbers and legal strategies until sometime around 4 a.m, when exhaustion finally pulled me under. When I opened my eyes, gray light was seeping through the curtains, and Daniel was already gone from the guest room. A note sat on the kitchen counter, his handwriting rushed and uneven. "I need time to think. Do not do anything yet, please." I read it twice, then set it aside. I was done waiting for Daniel to catch up. I was done waiting for anyone. Ethan's bruise was fading now, the purple softening to yellow-green at the edges. He sat at the breakfast table eating cereal while I explained that I had a meeting today, that a friend would pick him up from school. He looked up at me with those two old eyes. "Is it about what happened?" I paused, my hand on his shoulder. "Yes, I am going to make sure it does not happen again." He nodded slowly, the way he did when he was processing something important. Good. Just that one word, but it carried the weight of everything he had been through. I dropped him at school and watched him walk inside, his backpack bouncing against his small frame. He did not look back. Another small independence born from necessity. The drive to Philadelphia took 45 minutes. Emily Carter's office was in a glass tower downtown, not flashy but solid, the kind of building where serious work got done. I drove in silence, no radio, no podcasts, just my thoughts and the folder of documents sitting on the passenger seat like a weapon. I thought about what Harold had said to me in the hospital. Protect that boy. Today, I was going to start keeping that promise. I signed in at the reception desk, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, from anticipation. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt longer than the entire drive from Harrisburg. When the doors opened, Emily Carter was waiting for me outside the conference room. She was in her mid-40s with silver streaks in her dark hair and reading glasses pushed up on her head. Her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct. "Mrs. Monroe, thank you for coming in person. I needed to understand exactly what we are dealing with." She nodded and gestured toward the conference room. "Then let us deal with it." The conference room table was covered in documents organized into neat stacks. Emily had printed everything, color-coded tabs marking different sections, important passages highlighted in yellow and pink. A projector screen on the wall showed a timeline of events. I realized she had been preparing for this meeting like it was already a trial. "Before we begin," Emily said, settling into her chair across from me, "I need to ask you something." I braced myself. "How far are you willing to go?" I did not hesitate. "As far as it takes." Emily smiled, not warm exactly, but satisfied. "Good, because what I am about to show you will make you want to go further." She clicked to the first slide. The Harold Monroe Educational Trust, established March 2019. Purpose, education funding for grandchildren. Initial funding, $460,000. She pointed to the list of beneficiaries: Emma Victoria Monroe, Tyler James Monroe, and Ethan James Wilson Monroe. I noticed the name Emily had highlighted. Harold used Wilson Monroe. He gave Ethan both names. "Your son was not an afterthought," Emily said. "Harold specifically added him 6 months before his death, with a formal amendment. He planned for this." My throat tightened. Even dying, Harold had been fighting for my son. Emily highlighted a section on the next slide. "This is important, the trustee provisions." Margaret was appointed as primary trustee, but only temporarily. A successor trustee was supposed to be appointed by the beneficiary's guardians within 12 months. She was never meant to be permanent. I stared at the screen. "But she has been managing it for 14 months. Emily nodded. "Because she never notified anyone that a successor needed to be appointed. She never sent the required annual statements. She never disclosed the trust's existence to you at all. Is that illegal? It is a breach of her fiduciary duty. And it is just the beginning. The next slide showed the amended trust document, dated July 2023, 3 months after Harold's death. Emily walked me through the changes. Ethan's name removed from the beneficiary list. His 1/3 share redistributed to Emma and Tyler. Reason given: beneficiary not of direct bloodline. Harold's original trust had no bloodline requirement, Emily said. Margaret added that language herself. I stared at the document, at my son's name crossed out like he had never existed. She just erased him. And your sister-in-law witnessed it. Emily pointed to the signature at the bottom of the page. Victoria Monroe, her handwriting neat and careful. Something cold settled in my chest. Victoria had known. She had participated. She had signed her name to my son's erasure and never said a word. Emily pulled up a spreadsheet. 14 months of bank activity highlighted and annotated. Let me walk you through where the money went. I leaned forward, forced myself to look. May 2023. $22,000 withdrawn for administrative fees. No receipts, no documentation. July 2023. $42,000 for Emma's private school tuition. Emily's voice was clinical, precise. The actual tuition is $19,000. The extra $23,000 went directly to Margaret's personal account. September 2023, $35,000 for property maintenance. She remodeled her kitchen. I have the contractor's invoice. It was paid from the trust. November 2023, $28,000 for a vehicle purchase. A down payment on a Lexus SUV registered in Margaret's name. January 2024, $18,000 for an emergency family fund. No documentation whatsoever. It simply vanished. Throughout 2024, various smaller withdrawals totaling $12,000. Dinners, travel, clothing, all logged as beneficiary enrichment activities. Emily showed me the final number, and I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Original trust, $460,000. Current balance, $12,418. Missing, $447,582. Ethan's original share, $153,333. She did not just steal from your son, Emily said. She stole from all 3 grandchildren. But your son got nothing while she was spending everything. My voice came out steadier than I expected. What can we do? Emily outlined the path forward, ticking off options on her fingers. First, we file a petition for court review of trust administration. Second, we request immediate removal of Margaret as trustee. Third, we demand a full accounting of all expenditures. Fourth, we seek restitution plus interest plus legal fees. Fifth, we potentially refer the case to the district attorney for criminal fraud charges. I looked up sharply. Criminal? Emily's expression was serious. This is serious enough for criminal prosecution. But that is your choice. I need your guidance on how aggressive you want to be. What would you recommend? Start civil. The evidence is overwhelming. She will have to respond under oath. And people who lie to judges tend to dig their own graves. I asked about the envelope I had left at Thanksgiving, the one that had made Margaret drop her plate. Emily almost smiled. A shot across the bow. She explained what was inside. A formal notice that I was aware of the trust's existence. A request for immediate production of all trust documents. A notice of intent to seek legal remedy if documents were not provided within 10 days. It was not a lawsuit, Emily said. It was a warning. But she does not know that. Right now, Margaret is panicking. She is calling lawyers. She is trying to figure out how much you know. And how much do I know? Emily leaned back in her chair. Everything. She explained the timeline. Margaret had 10 days to respond to the document request. If she complied, we would have confirmation of everything we already knew. If she refused, we could go directly to court with evidence of obstruction. Either way, she loses, Emily said. What if she tries to hide more evidence? She can try. But I have already subpoenaed the bank records directly. She cannot alter those. Something shifted inside me. I was no longer the victim waiting to be rescued. I was a strategist planning a campaign. This was not just about getting Ethan's money back. It was about making sure Margaret could never do this to anyone again. Emily slid a document across the table. A retainer agreement, official representation. I read it carefully, every word, then signed my name at the bottom. Emily gathered the papers. "Welcome to the fight, Mrs. Monroe." I looked up at her. "Call me Jessica, and thank you for believing me." Emily's expression did not change. "I do not believe clients. I believe evidence, and yours is airtight." I stepped out of Emily's building into the gray November afternoon, my head spinning with numbers and strategies and the weight of what I had just set in motion. My phone buzzed. "Daniel." I hesitated, then answered. "Where are you?" His voice was strained. "Philadelphia, meeting with my lawyer." Silence on the line, heavy and sharp. Daniel spoke again. "I am at my mother's house." I stopped walking. "You went back there?" I needed to talk to her, to understand. "And? Did she explain why she stole from our son?" Another long pause. "She says you are overreacting. That the trust was always meant for blood relatives, that Grandpa was confused at the end." I laughed, and the sound surprised me. Bitter, hollow. "Harold was sharper at 81 than your mother is at 67, and I have documents that prove it." Daniel's voice dropped, pleading. "She is scared, Jess, really scared. I have never seen her like this." "Good. She should be scared. Maybe we can work this out privately, without courts, without lawyers." My grip tightened on the phone. "Your mother hit our son in front of 15 people. She stole his inheritance. She erased his name from legal documents. And you want to handle this privately?" "I just do not want to destroy the family." "The family destroyed itself, Daniel. I am just documenting the evidence." I took a breath, steadied my voice. "Come home when you are ready. But I need you to understand something." "What?" "I am filing the petition tomorrow, with or without you. Jess, please." I did not let him finish. "I am done waiting for your family to do the right thing. Now I am going to make them." I hung up before he could respond. The drive home felt different than the drive there. I was not nervous anymore. I was not second-guessing myself. The numbers played through my mind like a drumbeat. 460,000, 153,000, 12,000. I thought about Margaret's kitchen renovation, her new Lexus, all built on money meant for children's futures. Built on erasing a boy who had done nothing wrong except exist. I picked up Ethan from my friend's house. He was quiet in the car, sensing something different about me. "Mom? Did something happen?" "Something is going to happen. Something good." He did not ask more. He trusted me. That trust was everything. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone glowing in the darkness. 3 missed calls from Margaret. I did not listen to the voicemails. 2 texts from Victoria. "You are making a huge mistake. Call me before you do something you cannot take back." I screenshotted both messages. Everything was evidence now. I opened my laptop and began drafting my own timeline of events. For the petition, for the court, for the record. Margaret Monroe had built her kingdom on silence and fear. She had spent decades controlling everyone around her, erasing anyone who did not fit her vision of what family should be. Tomorrow, the silence would end. And Margaret would learn what happens when a mother stops being polite and starts fighting for her child. 1 week had passed since Thanksgiving. The petition was filed, sitting in the court system like a bomb waiting to detonate. Daniel had been sleeping in the guest room every night, and we moved around each other like polite strangers, speaking only about Ethan. The bruise on my son's face had faded to a faint yellow shadow, barely visible unless you knew where to look. But the bruise on the Monroe family was just beginning to show. Saturday morning, Daniel approached me in the kitchen while I was making coffee. He looked like he had not slept properly in days, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders hunched with the weight of something he did not want to say. My mother wants to have a family meeting. Tomorrow, at her house. I did not look up from my coffee. No. Daniel moved closer, desperation in his voice. Please. She says she wants to talk, to work things out. I finally met his eyes. She has had 3 years to work things out. She chose to hit my son instead. Daniel sat down across from me, his hands clasped together like he was praying. She is scared, Jess. The legal papers have shaken her. She has never dealt with anything like this before. Good. I wanted the word to sting, and from the look on his face, it did. He tried a different approach. If you do not come, she will say you refuse to even try, that you are the one being unreasonable. She will twist the narrative, make you the villain. I considered this. The narrative mattered. In families like this, the story people believed was often more powerful than the truth. Fine, I will come, but not to reconcile. Daniel looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Then why? I set down my coffee cup. To let her know exactly what she is up against. Saturday night, I sat at the dining table with documents spread around me like a battle plan. I had memorized the numbers, the dates, the withdrawals. Emily Carter's advice echoed in my mind. Do not reveal everything. Just enough to let them know you are serious. I selected 3 documents to bring. The original trust with Ethan's name clearly listed, the amended trust with his name removed, and 1 bank statement showing the kitchen renovation payment. Enough to shake them. Not enough to show my full hand. Ethan found me at the table, his pajamas too short at the ankles. He was growing so fast. Are you working, Mom? Sort of. I am getting ready for a meeting tomorrow. He climbed into the chair beside me and looked at the papers without really reading them. Is it about Grandma Margaret? I paused, then decided he deserved honesty. Yes. He was quiet for a moment, his small fingers tracing the edge of a document. Are you going to make her say sorry? I reached over and smoothed his hair. I am going to make sure she cannot hurt you again. He nodded, satisfied with that answer. Can I stay with Mrs. Patterson tomorrow? I do not want to go there. Of course, baby. You never have to go there again. Later that night, I noticed Daniel standing in the hallway watching from the shadows. He had heard the conversation. His face was unreadable. Shame, maybe. Or guilt. Or the particular kind of pain that comes from watching your child fear your family. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, then closed it again. He turned and walked back to the guest room without a word. I wondered if he would ever find his voice, or if Margaret had silenced him so long ago that he had forgotten he had one. Sunday afternoon arrived gray and cold, the sky threatening rain. Daniel drove while I sat in the passenger seat, the folder of documents in my lap like a loaded weapon. Neither of us spoke for the first 20 minutes. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. Promise me you will at least listen to what she has to say. I will listen. I just will not agree. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. She is still my mother, and Ethan is still my son. Guess which one I am going to protect? Margaret's house appeared at the end of a tree-lined driveway. Colonial style with white columns and perfectly maintained landscaping. The picture of old money respectability. I noticed the new kitchen windows gleaming in the afternoon light. $35,000 of stolen inheritance right there on display. Cars were already parked in the circular driveway. Victoria's sedan, Robert's truck, 2 others I did not recognize. The tribunal had assembled. Victoria met us at the door, her smile tight and practiced. Jessica, thank you for coming. I did not return the smile. Victoria. Her eyes flicked to the folder in my hands, and something crossed her face. Fear, maybe, or curiosity. Mother is in the living room. Everyone is waiting. I walked past her without another word. I could feel her gaze on my back like a target. The living room had been arranged like a courtroom. Margaret sat in the high-backed chair by the fireplace, the throne position, commanding the room from the best seat. Robert sat beside her, somehow smaller than I remembered, diminished. Victoria took her place on the love seat. 2 aunts and an uncle occupied the couch, the witnesses, the jury. Daniel hovered near the doorway, belonging to neither side, and facing them all was a single empty chair, clearly meant for me. I did not sit. Margaret rose from her throne, hands clasped in front of her like she was about to deliver a sermon. Her voice was honeyed, controlled, the voice of a woman used to getting her way. Jessica, thank you for agreeing to talk like civilized people. I know Thanksgiving was difficult. Emotions ran high. Things were said that perhaps should not have been said. I noticed what she did not say. She did not say she slapped my son. She did not say Ethan hit the floor. She said things were said, already rewriting history. Margaret continued, gesturing at the assembled family. Everyone here loves you and Daniel. We want what is best for this family. We are willing to forgive and move forward, if you will just drop this legal unpleasantness. I let the silence stretch out, watching her expression shift. Then I spoke. Forgive what, exactly? Margaret blinked. I am sorry? You said you are willing to forgive. I am asking what you are forgiving me for. Her composure flickered. Well, for making this so difficult, for bringing lawyers into a family matter. So you are forgiving me for responding to assault and theft with legal action. The word theft landed like a grenade in the middle of the room. I watched the relatives on the couch exchange glances. Margaret's face tightened. That is a very strong word. It is the accurate word. Victoria stood up, playing peacemaker. Jessica, I understand you are upset, but surely we can handle this within the family. I turned to her and she flinched. Can we? The way you handled witnessing the trust amendment? Victoria's face drained of color. I do not know what you are talking about. I opened my folder and pulled out the amended trust document. Your signature. Right there, witnessing the removal of my son's name. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Margaret, then back at me, then said nothing at all. The silence in the room was deafening. I stepped forward, still holding the folder. Let me tell you what I know. Then you can decide if this is something we can work out. I pulled out papers one by one as I spoke. Harold Monroe created a trust fund for his grandchildren in March 2019. Margaret's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. The original beneficiaries were Emma, Tyler, and Ethan. Equal shares. I looked at Victoria. 3 months after Harold died, you amended the trust. You removed Ethan's name. You cited bloodline, a requirement that Harold never included. Your sister-in-law witnessed it. Then I turned back to Margaret. And then you started spending. I read from the bank statement, my voice steady. $42,000 for Emma's tuition, though the actual cost was $19,000. $35,000 for property maintenance, which paid for your kitchen renovation. $28,000 for a vehicle purchase, your Lexus. $18,000 for an emergency fund, which has no documentation whatsoever. I paused, letting the numbers sink in. $460,000, reduced to $12,000. 97% of the trust, gone. The aunts exchanged horrified glances. They had not known. Robert looked up for the first time, something like horror on his face. Victoria was frozen like a statue. Daniel had gone pale by the doorway. Only Margaret remained composed, but her hands were shaking. Those are family funds, used for family purposes. I looked her dead in the eye. Ethan is family. Was his purpose served? Margaret's mask slipped. He was never meant to. She stopped herself, but it was too late. The sentence hung in the air, incomplete and damning. I stepped closer. Finish that sentence. He was never meant to what? Margaret's composure cracked completely. He is not Harold's blood. He is not a Monroe. Harold disagreed. That is why he put Ethan's name in the trust. He was sentimental. He did not understand the importance of maintaining proper boundaries. He understood perfectly. He understood that you would try to erase anyone who did not fit your definition of family. I tucked the papers back into my folder. He just did not live long enough to stop you, but I will. Margaret's voice changed, dropping to something almost intimate. Jessica, let us be practical. Legal battles are expensive, exhausting. They drag on for years. She moved closer, reaching out as if to touch my arm. I stepped back. What do you actually want? Money? I can write you a check today. For Ethan's education? A reasonable amount. I almost laughed. A reasonable amount? 20,000? 30? Enough for a good start. His share was 153,000. Margaret's eye twitched. That is not realistic. It was realistic when Harold was alive. It became unrealistic when you spent it on yourself. Margaret's voice hardened. I managed that trust for the good of this family. You stole from children, including your own grandchildren. Emma and Tyler's shares are nearly gone too. Victoria gasped. She had not known the full extent. She turned to Margaret. Mom, you said the trust was fine. You said there was plenty for Emma's college. Margaret shot her a look. Be quiet. Victoria's voice rose. With what? You just said there is only 12,000 left. For the first time in the conversation, Robert cleared his throat. Everyone turned to look at him. His voice was quiet, rusty from years of disuse. Margaret, is this true? All of it? Margaret turned on him. Robert, this is not the time. Is it true? She did not answer. Robert closed his eyes, and something in him seemed to break. I turned toward the door. Margaret called after me. Where do you think you are going? We are not finished. I paused and looked back at her. Yes, we are. I came to listen. I listened. Now I am going to let the court decide. You will destroy this family. You destroyed it years ago. You just did not realize anyone would notice. I walked toward the door, then stopped beside Daniel. Come home when you are ready to be a father. Then, louder to the room, I will see you all in court. I walked out the front door into cold November air. Behind me, voices rose, Victoria demanding answers, Margaret deflecting. Robert's silence louder than all of them. I did not have my car. Daniel had driven. I pulled out my phone and called a rideshare. I would wait in the cold. It was better than one more minute in that house. As I stood by the curb, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it and my heart stopped. Jessica, this is Robert. I need to talk to you, alone. There is something about Harold's trust you do not know. I stared at the message, reading it twice to make sure I understood. Behind me, Margaret's voice rose to a shriek inside the house. But for the first time, I was not listening to Margaret. I was wondering what the silent man finally had to say. I stood at the curb outside Margaret's house, cold November wind cutting through my coat. Inside, I could hear muffled shouting, the family imploding without me there to witness it. My rideshare was 7 minutes away according to the app. I read Robert's text again. There is something about Harold's trust you do not know. What could I possibly not know? I had seen the documents, the numbers, the signatures. I had watched Margaret's face when I laid out the evidence. What else was there? The front door opened and Daniel stepped out. He looked wrecked, 10 years older than his 38 years. He walked toward me slowly, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the cold. I will drive you home. I called a ride. Cancel it, please. I studied his face. Something had shifted in him, something I had not seen before. I canceled the rideshare. We drove in complete silence for the first 10 minutes. I watched the trees blur past the window, bare branches reaching toward the gray sky like skeletal fingers. Daniel's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Finally, he spoke. You were right. About all of it, I waited for more. I have spent my whole life pretending she was not who she is. And tonight, watching her try to buy you off, watching her blame everyone except herself, I could not pretend anymore. I did not respond. I needed more than words. But it was a start. We pulled into our driveway and sat in the parked car, engine off, neither of us moving to go inside. The house was dark. Ethan was staying at Mrs. Patterson's tonight. I had planned it that way, knowing today would be hard. The silence between us was heavy but different now. Not hostile, just exhausted. Daniel's voice cracked when he finally spoke. After you left, Victoria started screaming at Mom, asking where Emma's college money went. What did Margaret say? He laughed bitterly. She told Victoria to calm down, that she was being hysterical. The same thing she says to everyone who questions her. He turned to look at me, and I just stood there. Again. Like I always do. Why? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I have been standing there my whole life, and I do not know how to do anything else. I unbuckled my seatbelt and turned to face him fully. I need to know something, and I need the truth. He nodded. Did you know? About the trust? About Ethan being removed? Did you know before I told you? His face crumpled. I did not know the details, but I knew something was wrong. How? Because Mom stopped talking about it. After Grandpa died, she mentioned the trust constantly, managing it, protecting it, making sure it was handled properly. Then suddenly, nothing. Complete silence. And I did not ask because... He trailed off. Because you did not want to know. He nodded, shame written across every line of his face. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I looked at my husband, really looked at him. I saw the boy who had learned to survive by staying silent. I saw the man who had chosen comfort over courage for far too long. I saw someone who might finally be ready to change. Sorry is not enough, Daniel, but it is a start. I opened the car door. Come inside. We need to talk, really talk. We sat at the kitchen table. Coffee neither of us would drink growing cold in our cups. I asked the question that had been building inside me since the family meeting. Tell me about Marcus. Daniel flinched at his brother's name. What do you want to know? Everything. Because I think whatever happened to him is why you cannot stand up to her. Daniel stared at his coffee cup for a long moment. Then he began. I was 10 when I understood the rules. Marcus was the firstborn, the heir, the one who was supposed to carry the Monroe name into the next generation. I was the spare. Loved, sure, but never essential. Mom's entire world revolved around Marcus, his achievements, his future, his perfection. And Marcus played his part perfectly. Until he didn't. He looked up at me. Marcus was 24 when he met Keisha. She was smart, beautiful, kind, everything you could want in a partner. And she was black. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I could already see where this was going. Mom's reaction was immediate and absolute. She told Marcus that if he married Keisha, he was no longer her son, that he would be cut off from everything, the family, the money, the name. Daniel's voice dropped. Marcus thought she was bluffing. She was not. Marcus married Keisha anyway. Within a month, Margaret had removed him from the family trust entirely. She took down every photograph of him in the house. She forbade anyone from speaking his name. She changed the lock so he could not come by to visit. Daniel's hands were shaking now. I was 15 years old. I watched my brother become a ghost. He was there one day, and then he was just gone. Like he had never existed at all. I asked Mom once if I could call him, just to see how he was doing. She looked at me with those cold eyes and said that if I contacted Marcus, I would be next. He finally met my gaze. I was 15, and I believed her. I believed her for 23 years. I reached across the table and took his hand. You were a child. I am not a child anymore. I have not been for a long time. And I still believed her. Until tonight. His voice cracked. Until I watched her try to pay you off with $30,000 to make my son's stolen inheritance disappear. I let the silence settle between us. Then I said what we were both thinking. She did to Ethan what she did to Marcus. Erased him. Daniel nodded slowly. And I let her. Because I have been so afraid of becoming Marcus that I forgot to ask if Marcus was actually wrong. I squeezed his hand. Was he? No. He married the woman he loved. He stood up for himself. He is happy now. He has kids, a good life. He just does not have us. Have you talked to him since then? Daniel shook his head. Mom would have found out. She always finds out. The words hung in the air, like a prison he had built around himself. Your mother does not control you, Daniel. She only has power because you give it to her. It does not feel that way. I know, but here is the truth. You are not 15 anymore, and Ethan is not Marcus. He is 8 years old, and he has done nothing wrong except exist in a family that decided he was not worthy. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I know. Then prove it. Not to me. To him. Daniel squeezed my hand. What do you need me to do? I need you to stop being neutral. I need you to stop trying to keep peace with people who declared war on our son. And if she cuts me off, like Marcus? Then you will know exactly what your mother's love is worth. A long pause stretched between us. Then Daniel nodded. Okay. Okay, what? Okay. I am done. I choose you. I choose Ethan. Whatever happens next, I am on your side. I wanted to believe him. I had heard promises before. But something in his eyes looked different tonight. Broken open instead of broken down. Later that evening, I texted Robert back. I can meet tomorrow. Where? His response came quickly. Diner on Route 22, 10 in the morning. Do not tell Margaret or Daniel. I frowned at that last part. Why not Daniel? But I decided to trust the process. Tomorrow I would find out what Robert knew. Monday morning I dropped Ethan at school and drove to the diner. It was a small place off the main road, the kind of diner where nobody asked questions and everybody minded their own business. Robert was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall. He looked smaller than I remembered, older, worn thin by decades of living beside Margaret. He stood when I approached. Thank you for coming. I slid into the booth across from him. Your text said there is something I do not know. Robert pulled a folded envelope from his jacket. His hands trembled slightly as he held it. Harold gave this to me the week before he died. He made me promise not to open it unless Margaret did something unforgivable. I looked at the envelope, then back at Robert. And slapping an 8-year-old qualifies? Robert winced. Yes, among other things. He slid the envelope across the table. I opened it last night, after you left. I took the envelope, feeling something inside. Papers, multiple pages. What is this? Robert's voice was barely a whisper. Harold's backup plan. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter, the script shaky but legible. A second trust document I had never seen, and a small USB drive. Robert explained while I stared at the contents. Harold knew Margaret might try to change things after he died. So he created a secondary trust. Smaller but protected, with a different trustee. My heart was pounding now. Who is the trustee? Robert met my eyes. You are. I unfolded the handwritten letter, Harold's words filling the page. I read it aloud, my voice catching on every other sentence. Dear Jessica, if you are reading this, it means Margaret has done what I feared she would do. I am sorry I could not stop her myself. I created this trust separately because I knew my wife. I loved her once, but I learned long ago that her love comes with conditions most people cannot meet. Ethan should not have to meet them. The secondary trust contains $50,000 for Ethan's education. It cannot be touched by Margaret or anyone else in the Monroe family. Only you can access it. I also included recordings, conversations I had with Margaret over the years. She did not know I was recording. I am not proud of that. But I am proud of doing whatever it takes to protect a child who deserves better than my family has given him. Tell Ethan that his grandfather loved him. Blood did not matter to me. Love did. And tell my grandson Daniel that it is not too late to become the man I always hoped he would be. With love and regret, Harold Monroe. I set the letter down. My hands were trembling. Robert was watching me, I should have given this to you sooner. I was afraid of her too. I looked at him. Why now? Because I watched her slap that boy. And I watched my son do nothing. And I realized I have been doing nothing my whole marriage. He paused. I am tired of being nothing. I tucked the envelope back into my bag. Will you testify? In court, if it comes to that? Robert hesitated. Then he nodded. Yes, it is the least I can do. And the recordings? On this USB? I have not listened to them. But Harold said they were damning. I held the small drive in my palm. Such a tiny thing, but it could change everything. Thank you, Robert, for finally choosing the right side. Robert's eyes were wet. I am not sure there is redemption for me, but maybe there is still time to do something right. I was driving home when my phone rang. Victoria. I hesitated, then answered. Jessica, I need to talk to you. I am listening, not on the phone. Can we meet? Tomorrow? I thought about Victoria, the woman who had signed those documents, who had enabled Margaret's theft for over a year. But Victoria also had not known the trust was nearly empty until I told her. Why should I trust you? A long pause. Because I just found out Mom took out a second mortgage on my house, to cover what she stole, and she forged my signature to do it. My stomach dropped. She forged your signature? Victoria's voice was raw, shaking. I am done protecting her. I want to help you take her down. I pulled into my driveway, my mind racing. Daniel had started to crack. Robert had already broken. And now Victoria wanted to flip. Margaret's fortress was crumbling from the inside. But I knew better than to celebrate early. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. And Margaret was not cornered yet. She was just starting to realize she might be. Tomorrow I would meet Victoria. Tomorrow I would listen to Harold's recordings. Tomorrow I would find out exactly how much ammunition I had. But tonight, I went home to my husband, who had finally chosen me, and my son, who was starting to believe he belonged. The war was not over. It was just beginning to turn. Tuesday morning arrived gray and cold. 12 days since Thanksgiving. 12 days since my world split open. I was preparing to meet Victoria, the woman who had signed away my son's inheritance, the woman who was now claiming she wanted to help. Daniel caught me at the kitchen door before I left. He knew about the meeting. No more secrets between us. He offered to come, but I said no. This needs to be just us. Woman to woman. Daniel nodded, but worry creased his forehead. Be careful. Victoria has spent her whole life surviving Mom. That makes her unpredictable. I picked up my keys. So have I. That makes us even. Before leaving, I checked on Ethan. The bruise was almost completely gone now, just a faint yellow smudge that would disappear within days. He was doing homework at the kitchen table, his pencil moving steadily across the page. He looked up when I approached. Are you going somewhere? A meeting. I will be back before dinner. He nodded and returned to his work. Then, without looking up, he asked the question that had been sitting between us for days. Is it getting better? The family stuff? I paused in the doorway. It is getting clearer. That is not the same thing. But it is a start. He seemed satisfied with that answer. I put Harold's USB drive in my bag. I had not listened to the recordings yet. Part of me had been waiting, sensing they should be shared. Maybe Victoria needed to hear them too. Maybe we both needed to understand exactly who Margaret really was. I texted Victoria the address. Coffee shop on Maple Street. 11 in the morning. Her response came immediately. I will be there. The coffee shop was small, tucked away on a quiet street. The kind of place where people came to have conversations they did not want overheard. I arrived first and chose a corner table with my back to the wall. Old habit from years of being ambushed by Margaret at family events. Always know your exits. Always see who is coming. Victoria arrived exactly on time. She looked different than I had ever seen her. No makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. The polished sister-in-law I knew, the one who always had perfect hair and designer clothes and a practiced smile, had been replaced by someone raw and exhausted. She sat across from me without ordering anything. "Thank you for meeting me. I did not waste time on pleasantries. You said Margaret forged your signature. Start there." Victoria nodded, appreciating the directness. 6 months ago, Mom said she needed to refinance her house. She asked if she could use mine as collateral. "Temporarily," she said, "just until the paperwork went through." I said no. I felt something tighten in my chest, but she did it anyway. Victoria pulled papers from her bag. "I found out 2 days ago, after the family meeting. I went home and started checking my mortgage statements. Something I should have done months ago." She slid the documents across the table. "Second mortgage, $200,000. My signature. But I never signed anything." I examined the papers carefully. The signature did look like Victoria's. Close enough to fool a bank, close enough to pass a cursory inspection. How did she get away with this? Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mom has been signing things for me since I was 18. School forms, car loans, credit card applications. She always said she was helping, making things easier. I thought I was lucky to have a mother who handled the complicated stuff." I looked up at her. She was building a trail, making it look normal so no one would question it when she needed to forge something bigger. Victoria's eyes filled with tears she quickly wiped away. "I have been under her financial control my entire adult life. I just did not see it until now." She paused. "I thought I was the favorite, the good daughter. Turns out I was just the most useful." Victoria told me her story then, the parts I had never seen, the parts she had hidden even from herself. Margaret controlled everything. Victoria's college choice, her career, her marriage. "I wanted to be a veterinarian," Victoria said. "I loved animals. I was good with them. Mom said it was not prestigious enough for a Monroe. She made me go into finance instead. Victoria's husband Richard was Margaret approved. She introduced us, practically arranged the whole thing. I thought I loved him. Now I realize I just loved her approval." When Emma was born, Margaret's control intensified. Mom started a college fund for Emma, managed it herself, said she was protecting Emma's future. I interrupted. "Let me guess, that fund is empty too." Victoria nodded. 12,000 left, out of 80,000. The same pattern, different victim. Every time I tried to push back, Mom reminded me how much she had done for me, how much Emma needed her grandmother. How ungrateful I was being. Victoria's voice hardened. "I spent 34 years thinking I was loved. I was owned." Victoria looked at me directly. "When you stood up at that meeting, I hated you. I thought you were destroying our family. And now? Now I realize the family was already destroyed. You were just the first one honest enough to say it out loud." She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "I have something you need to see." She scrolled through text messages and turned the screen toward me. A conversation with Margaret spanning the past year. I read the messages, feeling my fury build with each one. "Do not discuss the trust with anyone. Family matters stay in the family. I have handled Ethan's situation. No need to mention it to Jessica. Sign the enclosed documents. Do not read them, just sign. Trust me. If anyone asks about the funds, refer them to me." I looked up. "Can I screenshot these?" Victoria nodded. "Take whatever you need. There is more. Emails, bank records she asked me to hide. I kept copies of everything." Why? Because even when I was loyal to her, some part of me knew this day would come. I pulled out Harold's USB drive. "Your grandfather left this. Robert gave it to me yesterday." Victoria's eyes widened. "Dad talked to you? He is done being silent." And apparently so was Harold, before he died. I explained the secondary trust, Harold's letter, the recordings. Victoria stared at the small drive. "Recordings of what?" "I do not know. I have not listened yet. I thought maybe we should hear them together." Victoria hesitated, then nodded. Let us do it. We moved to my car for privacy. The coffee shop was too public for what we were about to hear. I plugged the USB into my laptop and navigated to the audio files. 3 recordings, dated 6 months before Harold's death. I clicked the first one. Harold's voice filled the car, thin but clear. I want to make sure Ethan is included in everything. Then Margaret's voice, sharp and dismissive. Harold, he is not even Daniel's biological child. Harold again. That does not matter to me. Margaret's tone hardened. It matters to the family legacy. We can't dilute the Monroe name with... Harold cut her off. With what, Margaret? With love? With a child who needs us? Margaret's response was cold. You are being sentimental. Harold's voice strengthened despite his illness. I am being decent. Something you have forgotten how to be. The recording ended. Victoria was pale. She knew, even then, she was planning to remove him. I skipped to the third file, the one labeled Confrontation. Harold's voice was weaker now, closer to the end. I know what you are planning, Margaret. After I am gone. Margaret's dismissive laugh. You are imagining things. The medication is affecting your mind. Harold was not deterred. I am dying, not stupid. I have seen how you treat that boy. I have seen how you treat anyone who does not serve your purpose. Margaret's voice turned hard. Everything I do is for this family. Harold's response was immediate. No, everything you do is for control, and when I am gone, you will have no one left to stop you. A long pause. Then Margaret's voice, cold and clear. Then, I suppose it is good you will not be around to see it. The recording ended. Silence filled the car. Victoria whispered. She knew he was dying, and she just waited. She waited for him to die so she could do whatever she wanted. We sat without speaking for a long moment. Victoria's hands were shaking. I spent my whole life trying to please her, and she is just empty inside. I shook my head. She is not empty. She is strategic. There is a difference. Victoria looked at me. How do you stay so calm? I am not calm. I am focused. There is a difference there, too. Victoria straightened in her seat, wiping her eyes. What do you need from me? Your testimony. In court, about the trust amendments, the texts, the forgery. Victoria's face paled. That means going against her publicly. Yes. She will try to destroy me. She has already been destroying you. At least this way you fight back. Victoria was quiet, calculating the cost. Then something shifted in her expression. Emma needs to know her college fund was not stolen by a stranger. It was stolen by her grandmother. Is that a yes? It is a yes. All the way to court if that is what it takes. We shook hands. Formal, deliberate. A pact sealed. I am going to send everything to my lawyer today. The texts, the recordings, your mortgage documents. And then we wait for Margaret to realize she is surrounded. Victoria almost smiled. She is going to be furious. Good. Furious people make mistakes. We exchanged phone numbers properly. Allies now, not just in-laws. Victoria said something that surprised me. I never thought I would be on this side, against my own mother. I looked at her. You are not against her. You are for your daughter, for the truth. That is different. She nodded slowly. I think I am starting to understand that. I was driving home when my phone buzzed. I pulled over to check. Unknown number. The message made my blood run cold. I know you met with Victoria. I know what you are planning. You have no idea who you are dealing with. Back off now, or I will make sure you lose everything, including that boy you think you are protecting. I stared at the screen, reading the words again. That boy. She could not even use his name. I screenshotted the message immediately and forwarded it to Emily Carter with a note. Just received this, adding to evidence file. Emily's response came within minutes. This is witness intimidation. If she contacts you again, we can add harassment charges. Do not respond to her directly. I did not respond to Margaret, But I did not delete the message either. Every word was ammunition now. I called Daniel. I told him about the text, about the threat. His voice went tight. She threatened Ethan? Not directly. But the implication is clear. Daniel was silent for a moment. Then his voice came through, harder than I had ever heard it. I am calling her. Daniel, Emily said, not to engage. I am not calling as your husband. I am calling as her son. She needs to know this is the line she cannot cross. For the first time I heard steel in his voice. Okay, but record the call if you can. Already planning on it. I arrived home to find Daniel on the phone in the kitchen. His voice was low, controlled, deadly calm. And if you ever mention Ethan again, in any context, I will personally make sure the court knows exactly what kind of person you are. A pause while Margaret responded. Then Daniel again. No, Mother. You listen. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. Stay away from my family. He hung up and looked at me. She is scared. I could hear it. What did she say? That we are making a mistake. That we will regret this. That family forgives. And what did you say? Daniel's jaw tightened. I said some families are not worth forgiving. That night, I lay awake in bed. Daniel was beside me, back in our bedroom for the first time since Thanksgiving. My phone showed the evidence folder growing larger by the hour. Victoria's texts, Harold's recordings, the threat message, Robert's documents. Margaret was cornered but not defeated. Tomorrow, Emily would file the expanded petition with all the new evidence. Tomorrow, the court battle would officially begin. But tonight, I allowed myself one small moment of hope. I had my husband back. I had allies I never expected. And Harold's voice, even from beyond the grave, was still fighting for my son. The wall around Margaret Monroe was cracking, and soon it would fall. 2 months had passed since Thanksgiving. 2 months of depositions and document requests and strategy sessions. 2 months of watching Margaret's lawyers scramble to contain the damage. February had arrived cold and gray, but today the sun was breaking through the clouds like a promise. Today was the deposition. Today Margaret Monroe would face questions under oath for the first time. I woke before dawn, my mind already racing through everything that needed to happen. Daniel was awake too, making coffee in the kitchen, moving quietly so he would not wake Ethan. Neither of us had slept well. The weight of what was coming pressed down on us like a physical thing. I dressed carefully, professionally. A navy blazer, simple jewelry, nothing flashy. Emily's advice echoed in my mind. Do not give them anything to react to. Let the evidence do the talking. Ethan was still asleep when I checked on him. He was staying with Mrs. Patterson today. He did not need to know what was happening, did not need to carry this weight. Before I left, I stood in his doorway and watched him breathe. His face was peaceful, unmarked, the bruise long gone. I whispered words he could not hear. This is for you, baby. Then I closed the door and went to meet my husband. Daniel drove us to the Dauphin County Courthouse in Harrisburg. The building was imposing, all stone columns and wide steps, and the American flag snapping in the winter wind. I had my folder in my bag, though Emily had copies of everything. Daniel squeezed my hand before we got out of the car. Whatever happens today, we did the right thing. I looked at him. I know, but I still want to win. He almost smiled. So do I. We walked up the steps together. Emily Carter's conference room had been transformed into a legal battlefield. Long table, water pitchers, recording equipment positioned precisely. A court reporter sat in the corner, fingers poised over her stenotype machine, ready to capture every word. Emily greeted me with a firm nod. Ready? More than ready. The opposition arrived exactly on time. Margaret walked through the door like she owned the building, her chin lifted, her posture perfect. She was dressed impeccably in a designer suit and pearls, her hair styled, her makeup flawless. But I noticed things she could not hide. The way her hands trembled slightly, the tightness around her eyes, the gauntness in her cheeks that had not been there 2 months ago. Her lawyer, Gerald Whitmore, walked beside her. Silver-haired, expensive, the kind of attorney who billed $500 an hour and looked it. Margaret's eyes found mine across the room. Something flickered there. Contempt, maybe. Or fear. She masked it quickly. Jessica. I hope we can resolve this like adults. I did not respond. Emily stepped forward. Mrs. Monroe, please have a seat. We have a lot to cover. We took our positions. Margaret and Gerald on one side of the table, Emily and me on the other. The court reporter announced the date, time, and participants for the record. Gerald spoke first, his voice smooth with practiced confidence. My client is here voluntarily in good faith to address these baseless accusations. Emily smiled thinly. We will let the evidence determine what is baseless. I watched Margaret's hands. She was gripping her pen too tight, her knuckles white. The first crack in the armor. Emily opened her folder. Let us begin. Emily started with basics, her tone casual, almost friendly, lulling Margaret into a false sense of security. Mrs. Monroe, you were appointed trustee of the Harold Monroe Educational Trust in April 2023, correct? Margaret nodded. Yes, my late father-in-law trusted me to manage his legacy, and the original beneficiaries were Emma Monroe, Tyler Monroe, and Ethan Wilson Monroe? Margaret's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The original document had some irregularities. Emily did not miss a beat. Irregularities? Harold Monroe signed this document 6 months before his death. He was examined by his physician that same week and declared mentally competent. Are you suggesting he did not know what he was signing? Gerald interjected. My client is not qualified to speak to the deceased's mental state. Emily pivoted smoothly. Then let us speak to actions. Mrs. Monroe, did you amend this trust 3 months after Harold's death? Margaret's voice was careful. I made necessary adjustments. Emily produced the amended trust document, sliding it across the table. This amendment removed Ethan Wilson Monroe from the beneficiary list. Can you explain why? Margaret's answer came too quickly, rehearsed. He was not an appropriate beneficiary. Based on what criteria? He is not a blood relative of the Monroe family. Emily's eyebrows rose. Interesting. Because the original trust contains no bloodline requirement. You added that language yourself. I was interpreting my father-in-law's true intentions. Were you? Emily produced another document, because I have evidence suggesting otherwise. She slid Harold's handwritten notes across the table. These are Harold Monroe's personal notes from the month before he died. They have been verified by a handwriting expert. She read aloud. Ethan is to be included in all family provisions. Margaret will object. Do not let her win. Margaret's face went pale. Where did you get that? From someone who knew Harold's true intentions. Unlike you, Gerald raised his hand. This document has not been properly authenticated for these proceedings. Emily slid the handwriting expert's analysis across the table. It has been verified by a certified forensic document examiner. The report is attached. Gerald flipped through the pages, his expression tightening. Margaret looked at her lawyer, then back at Emily. The confidence was beginning to crack. Emily shifted to the financial evidence. Let us discuss how the trust funds were used. She produced bank statements, each transaction highlighted in yellow. $460,000 at Harold's death. $12,000 remaining as of last month. Can you explain the discrepancy? Margaret's voice stayed even. The funds were used for beneficiary purposes. $42,000 for Emma's tuition. But the school confirms tuition was $19,000. Where did the other $23,000 go? Administrative costs. Emily pulled out another document. This bank transfer shows $23,000 moved to your personal checking account 3 days after the tuition payment. Gerald tried to intervene. That could be reimbursement for legitimate expenses. Then where are the receipts? The trust requires documentation of all expenditures over $500. Silence. Emily continued, relentless. $35,000 for property maintenance. Here is the contractor's invoice for your kitchen renovation, paid directly from the trust account. The trust's property? Or your personal residence? Margaret's composure slipped. The property needed work. Your personal residence is not trust property, Mrs. Monroe. Emily let the silence stretch. $28,000 for a vehicle purchase. A Lexus SUV registered in your name, not the trust's name. Transportation was necessary for trust business. What trust business requires a personal luxury vehicle? Gerald's voice rose. My client does not need to justify every operational decision. Actually, as trustee, she absolutely does. That is what fiduciary duty means. Emily stood and walked slowly around the table. Let me be clear about what we have established. You removed a child from his grandfather's trust without legal authority. You spent 97% of the funds on personal expenses. You failed to provide required documentation or annual statements. And you concealed all of this from the beneficiary's guardians. Margaret's voice wavered. I was protecting the family. You were stealing from children, including your own grandchildren. Gerald spoke quickly. I need a moment with my client. Emily nodded. Of course. But we are not finished, not by a long way. During the 5-minute recess, I stepped into the hallway. My phone buzzed. Daniel. How is it going? I typed back. She is rattled. Emily has not even played the recordings yet. His response came immediately. Give her hell. I almost smiled. That is the plan. We reconvened. Margaret looked composed again. She had rallied during the break, rebuilt some of her walls. Gerald spoke first. My client acknowledges that some documentation was incomplete. She is willing to discuss remediation. Emily held up her hand. Before we discuss remediation, there is additional evidence to present. Gerald frowned. What evidence? Emily produced the USB drive, audio recordings made by Harold Monroe in the months before his death. Margaret's composure shattered. That is private. You cannot use that. Gerald jumped in. I object to any recordings obtained without proper consent. Emily's voice was calm. Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state. Harold was a party to these conversations. The recordings are fully admissible. She plugged the USB into a speaker system. Let us listen. Harold's voice filled the room, thin and weak, but unmistakably clear. I want to make sure Ethan is included in everything. Then Margaret's voice, sharp and dismissive. Harold, he is not even Daniel's biological child. Harold again. That does not matter to me. Margaret's recorded words cut like a knife. It matters to the family legacy. We cannot dilute the Monroe name with people who do not belong. Harold's response was firm. With what, Margaret? With love? With a child who needs us? The recording ended. I watched Margaret's face, white as paper. Gerald was scribbling notes furiously. Emily spoke. There is one more. She played the third recording. Harold's voice, weaker now. I know what you are planning, Margaret. After I am gone. Margaret's dismissive laugh. You are imagining things. The medication is affecting your mind. Harold was not deterred. I am dying, not stupid. I have seen how you treat that boy. I have seen how you treat anyone who does not serve your purpose. A pause. Then Margaret's voice, cold and final. Then I suppose it is good you will not be around to see it. The recording ended. The silence in the room was absolute. The court reporter had stopped typing, frozen. Margaret's hands were shaking visibly now. Gerald cleared his throat. I need to confer with my client. Privately, now. Before they could stand, the conference room door opened. Robert Monroe stepped inside. He looked older than I had ever seen him, but somehow stronger too. Margaret's face contorted. Robert? What are you doing here? He did not look at her. Something I should have done years ago. He turned to Emily. I would like to make a statement. On the record. Emily looked at Gerald. Any objection? Gerald was flustered. This is highly irregular. Emily's voice was smooth. "It is a deposition. Witnesses can provide relevant testimony." Robert sat at the table across from his wife of 41 years. He did not look at her. "My name is Robert Monroe. I was married to Margaret for 41 years. He paused. I filed for separation last week." Margaret gasped. "Robert!" He continued as if she had not spoken. "I watched my wife systematically destroy anyone who threatened her control. My son, Marcus. My grandson, Ethan. Anyone who did not fit her definition of acceptable." The court reporter's fingers moved steadily, capturing every word. Robert's voice was quiet but clear. "I knew about the trust amendments. I knew she removed Ethan. I said nothing because I was afraid of her." He finally looked at Margaret. "I am not afraid anymore." Robert reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "These are additional records. Bank accounts Margaret kept hidden. Transfers I traced after I started looking." He handed the folder to Emily. "There is more money missing than you know. At least another 50,000, moved to accounts under her maiden name." Margaret's voice was shrill. "You are lying." Robert met her eyes. "I am telling the truth, for the first time in 40 years. He stood and looked at me. "I am sorry I did not do this sooner. Harold would have wanted me to." He walked out without looking back at his wife. The door clicked shut behind him. The room was silent. Margaret was trembling, rage or fear or both distorting her features. Gerald whispered urgently in her ear. Emily calmly added Robert's documents to her evidence folder. "I think we have enough for today. Unless Mrs. Monroe would like to revise any of her earlier statements?" Margaret's voice was hoarse. "I want to speak to my lawyer, alone." Emily nodded. "Of course. We will resume tomorrow." Outside the conference room, Emily and I walked to her office. She closed the door behind us. "That went better than expected." I shook my head. Robert filing for separation. I did not know. Neither did I. But it does not matter. What matters is that Margaret's defense just collapsed. I looked at the folder of evidence, thicker now than when we started. What happens now? Emily's smile was thin but satisfied. Now we push for settlement. Or we go to trial and bury her. I drove home as the sun set, painting the winter sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed. Victoria! I checked the message at a red light. Mom just called me screaming. She knows Dad left her. "She is blaming you for everything," I typed back. "Let her blame. It does not change the facts." Victoria's response came quickly. She is not going to give up. She is talking about countersuing, claiming elder abuse, saying Dad was manipulated. I put the phone down and focused on the road. Of course, Margaret would not go quietly. Of course, she would fight back with lies and accusations. But desperate moves were sloppy moves. And every lie Margaret told now was one more lie I could prove. Tomorrow, we would resume. Tomorrow, Margaret would face more questions she could not answer. But tonight, I allowed myself to believe that the end was finally in sight. I arrived home after the deposition emotionally drained in ways I had not expected. The house was warm and lit, the smell of something cooking drifting from the kitchen. Daniel had made dinner. Ethan was already in bed, worn out from a day of playing at Mrs. Patterson's house. Daniel met me at the door, his face searching mine for answers. How bad was it? I set down my bag. For her? Devastating. I told him everything. The financial evidence laid out in undeniable detail. Margaret's fumbling explanations that explained nothing. The recordings of Harold's voice filling the conference room, stripping away every pretense Margaret had built. Victoria's testimony confirmed for the official record. And then Robert's appearance, his quiet devastation of everything Margaret thought she had secured. Daniel listened without interrupting, his expression cycling through shock, shame, and something that looked almost like relief. When I finished, he sat heavily on the couch. Dad filed for separation? I sat beside him. Last week. He did not tell anyone. Daniel stared at the carpet. 41 years, and he finally walked away. I reached for his hand. He said he was tired of being afraid. Daniel's voice was quiet. I know the feeling. We sat in silence for a moment, processing everything that had happened. Then I remembered. There was one file on the USB I had not opened. The audio recordings had been played at the deposition, but there was also a video file. I had noticed it when I first looked through the contents, but something made me save it. It felt private somehow, meant for a different moment than a legal proceeding. There is something else, I told Daniel. Harold left a video. He looked up sharply. A video? I have not watched it. I thought maybe we should watch it together. We sat at the kitchen table with the laptop between us. I plugged in the USB and navigated to the video file. The thumbnail showed Harold, thin and pale, but alert. The file was dated 3 weeks before his death. Daniel's hand found mine under the table. His grip was tight. I clicked play. Harold's face filled the screen. He was sitting in his study, the room I remembered from our hospital visits. Books lined the shelves behind him, and he sat in the old leather chair that had always seemed to swallow him. His voice was weak but steady. If you are reading this, I am gone. And if Robert gave you this file, it means Margaret did exactly what I feared she would do. Daniel's breath caught beside me. Harold continued, his eyes seeming to look directly at us through the camera. I am recording this because I know my wife. I have known her for over 60 years. And I have watched her destroy anyone who does not serve her vision of what this family should be. Harold shifted in his chair, the movement clearly painful. Margaret was not always like this. Or maybe she was, and I was too young and too in love to see it. But over the years, I watched her push away anyone who threatened her control. My son Marcus, my grandson Tyler's mother, and now little Ethan. He paused and coughed, a harsh sound that spoke of his failing body. I tried to protect them all. I failed with Marcus. I was too weak to stand up to her then, but I will not fail Ethan. I felt tears on my cheeks. Beside me, Daniel was crying openly, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Harold leaned forward in his chair, his expression intensifying. In my will, I included a clause Margaret does not know about. If she violates her fiduciary duty, if she removes any beneficiary without legal cause or misuses the funds for personal gain, all remaining trust assets transfer automatically to an independent trustee. He smiled slightly. That trustee is Jessica. Robert has the documents. My hand flew to my mouth. I knew about the secondary trust, the $50,000 Harold had set aside. But this was different. This was the entire original trust, automatically transferred to my control because of Margaret's violations. Harold had set a trap that Margaret had walked directly into. Margaret thought she could wait me out, Harold said. She thought once I was gone she could do whatever she wanted. She was wrong. The video continued. Harold's expression softened, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentler. Daniel, if you are watching this, I am sorry. I am sorry I did not protect you better from your mother. I am sorry I let fear keep me silent for so long. Daniel made a sound beside me, half sob, half something else. Harold went on. You were always the gentle one, the peacemaker. But sometimes peace is not possible, son. Sometimes you have to fight for what is right, even when it hurts. He paused. I hope you have found the courage I never had. I hope you have chosen Jessica and Ethan over your mother's approval. If you have, I am proud of you. Daniel covered his face with his hands, his whole body shaking. I put my arm around him but did not speak. This moment belonged to him and his grandfather. Harold's eyes seemed to look directly at me through the screen. Jessica, I knew from the moment I met you that you were different. You did not care about the Monroe name or the Monroe money. You just loved my grandson. I wiped my eyes, trying to see through the tears. I also knew Margaret would never accept you, or Ethan. She does not know how to love without conditions. Harold's voice strengthened. But you do. That is why I am trusting you with my legacy. Not the money, that is just paper. My legacy is making sure the children in this family know they are loved. All of them. Equally. Then Harold's voice changed, becoming tender in a way I had only heard when he spoke to Ethan. And Ethan, my boy, I know you might not remember me when you are older. You were so young when I got sick. But I want you to know something. My heart broke hearing him address my son, knowing Ethan would only hear these words through a recording. You are my grandson. Not because of blood, not because of papers, but because I chose you, the same way your mother chose you, the same way Daniel should choose you. Harold smiled at the camera. Family is not who you are born to, son. It is who shows up for you. And I hope, when you are older, you will have people who show up for you every single day. He reached toward the camera, as if trying to touch Ethan's face through the screen. Be brave, be kind, and never let anyone tell you that you do not belong. The video ended. Daniel and I sat in silence, the kitchen suddenly too quiet. The weight of Harold's words hung in the air around us. Daniel spoke first, his voice raw. He knew. He knew exactly what she would do. He tried to stop her the only way he could. His voice cracked, and I spent my whole life trying to earn her approval, while Grandpa spent his last months protecting us from her. Daniel stood and walked to the window. I wasted so much time, so many years being afraid of her. I joined him, putting my hand on his shoulder. You are not afraid anymore. No, I am angry. He turned to face me. I am angry at her for what she did to Marcus, to Ethan, to you, and I am angry at myself for letting it happen. I looked into his eyes. You cannot change the past, but you can change what happens next. He nodded slowly. Send the video to Emily. All of it. Are you sure? Grandpa wanted it used. He made this recording knowing it might end up in court. He looked at me with something new in his eyes. Let us finish what he started. I forwarded the video file to Emily Carter that night. Her response came within an hour, despite the late time. This changes everything. The secret clause makes the original trust violations even more damaging. And the video itself is devastating testimony from the grave. She continued, I am recommending we push for full removal of Margaret as trustee, recovery of all misused funds, and potentially refer this to the district attorney for criminal fraud charges. I showed Daniel the message. His jaw tightened. Do it, no hesitation, no looking back. The next morning, news traveled fast through the Monroe family. By breakfast, my phone was buzzing constantly. Victoria texted. I heard about the video. Mom is losing her mind. One of the aunts sent a confused message. Is it true Robert left Margaret? A cousin I barely knew asked what was happening, saying no one would tell him anything. The family was fracturing along new lines. I called Victoria. How bad is it? She sounded exhausted. She has been calling everyone in the family, trying to spin this, saying Dad was manipulated, that you coerced him, that the recordings are fake. Is anyone believing her? Some. The older relatives, the ones who have always been afraid of her. Victoria paused. But most people are starting to ask questions. Questions she cannot answer. Like what? Like why did Dad leave after 41 years? Like where did the money go? Like why did Grandpa Harold feel the need to make secret recordings? Victoria's voice hardened. The lies only work when no one looks too closely. You made them look. I texted Robert. Thank you for yesterday. Are you okay? His response took an hour. I am staying with my sister in Maryland. First peace I have had in 40 years. Then another message. I should have done this decades ago. I am sorry it took so long, I replied. It is not too late to do the right thing. Robert's response made my throat tighten. That is what Harold said to me, the last time I saw him. Harold's influence was still reaching across time, shaping events even after death. Even gone, he was still fighting. That afternoon, Daniel's phone rang. He checked the screen and showed me. "Mom." I said he did not have to answer. He shook his head. "Yes, I do. One last time." He put it on speaker so I could hear. Margaret's voice was ragged, nothing like the controlled woman who had commanded rooms and intimidated everyone around her for decades. Daniel, you have to help me." Daniel's voice was calm. "Help you with what?" "This has all gone too far. Your father has lost his mind. Jessica has poisoned everyone against me. You have to make them stop." Daniel did not flinch. "Make who stop? The lawyers, the court, everyone. This is a family matter. It should stay in the family." Daniel's response was immediate. "You stole from your own grandchildren. You hit an 8-year-old. You forged Victoria's signature on a mortgage." Margaret's voice rose, defensive. "Those are lies, exaggerations. Everything I did was for this family, for control. You did it for control." The line went silent for a moment. When Margaret spoke again, her voice had changed. Colder, harder. "After everything I have done for you, after everything I sacrificed, you are choosing that woman and her brat over your own mother." Daniel's face went still. "Her brat. His name is Ethan, and he is my son." Margaret's response was venomous. "He is not your son. He is not your blood. He is nothing." Daniel cut her off. "He is more family to me than you have ever been." Margaret's voice turned to ice. "You will regret this. When you lose everything, when she takes everything from you, do not come crawling back." Daniel's response was final. "I will not. Goodbye, Mother." He hung up. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady when he looked at me. "Are you okay?" He was quiet for a moment. "No, but I will be." He looked at me. "She called Ethan her brat. Nothing. After everything, that is still how she sees him." I touched his arm. "Now you know for sure." I always knew. I just did not want to admit it. Later that evening, Ethan came home from school. He dropped his backpack and looked at us sitting together on the couch. "Is everything okay? You both look weird." Daniel laughed, a real laugh, the first in months. "We are okay, buddy. Better than okay." Ethan looked suspicious. "Did something happen?" "Something good," I told him. "We will tell you when you are older." He shrugged. "Okay, can we have pizza for dinner?" Daniel smiled. "Absolutely." We ordered pizza and watched a movie together, pretending it was a normal Tuesday. But it was not normal. It was the first night of the rest of our lives. After Ethan went to bed, I checked my email. Emily Carter had written again. "Court date set. 3 weeks from today. Margaret's lawyer is pushing for settlement. She knows she cannot win at trial." I showed Daniel. He read it twice. "What do you want to do?" I thought about Harold's video, Robert's testimony, Victoria's evidence, the recordings, the documents. Everything Margaret had built was crumbling. I want her to face what she did, in a courtroom, on the record. Daniel nodded. "Then that is what we will do." I typed my response to Emily. "No settlement. We go to trial. I hit send. 3 weeks. 3 weeks until Margaret Monroe finally faced justice. Harold could not see this moment, but he had made it possible, and I intended to honor that gift." Late March arrived with the first warm day after a brutal winter. 4 months had passed since Margaret slapped Ethan at that Thanksgiving table. 4 months of depositions and evidence gathering and sleepless nights. 4 months of watching Margaret's world slowly crumble around her. Today, it would all end. Today was the trial. I woke before dawn, my eyes opening to darkness, my mind already racing through everything that needed to happen. Daniel was awake beside me, staring at the ceiling. Neither of us had slept well. We got up without speaking and moved through the house like ghosts, making coffee, checking documents, preparing for war. Ethan was staying with Mrs. Patterson. He did not need to see this. He did not need to carry this weight. Before I left, I stood in his doorway one last time. He was still asleep, his face peaceful in the early morning light. I thought about everything that had brought us to this moment, the slap, the silence, the discovery of the stolen inheritance. Harold's voice reaching across death to protect the grandson he had chosen to love. I whispered words Ethan could not hear. "This is for you, baby." Then I closed the door. Daniel drove us to the Dauphin County Courthouse in Harrisburg. The building loomed against the morning sky, all stone columns and wide steps and American flags snapping in the spring breeze. I had my folder in my bag, though Emily had copies of everything. We parked and sat for a moment, neither of us moving. Daniel squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens today, we did the right thing." I looked at him. "I know, but I still want to win." He almost smiled. "So do I." We walked up the steps together side by side, ready for whatever came next. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, rows of wooden benches. Not the dramatic setting of television dramas, just a room where lives got decided. Emily Carter was already at the plaintiff's table, files organized, laptop open, ready for battle. She nodded when she saw me. Ready? More than ready. Margaret arrived with Gerald Whitmore a few minutes later. I barely recognized her. She had aged decades in 4 months. Gaunt, gray-skinned, smaller somehow. The polished matriarch in designer suits had been replaced by a woman dressed in black, like she was attending her own funeral. Maybe she was. Gerald walked beside her, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expensive suit pressed and pristine. But even he looked nervous. I looked around the courtroom gallery. Victoria sat behind me, ready to be called as a witness. Robert was there too, seated separately from Margaret, his face grim but resolved. A few relatives were scattered through the benches, choosing sides with their seating. Daniel sat directly behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence. Margaret scanned the room, saw her husband, her children, her family all positioned against her. Something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe. Or the beginning of understanding. Then her mask returned, harder than ever. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Thornton presiding. Judge Thornton entered the courtroom, her black robe flowing behind her. She was a black woman in her 60s, with silver hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. I had heard she had a reputation for fairness and zero tolerance for nonsense. She took her seat and reviewed her papers briefly. "We are here in the matter of Monroe versus Monroe. Petition for removal of trustee and recovery of trust assets. Is counsel ready?" Emily stood. "Ready, Your Honor." Gerald rose as well. "Ready, Your Honor." Judge Thornton nodded. "Then let us begin." Emily's opening was precise and devastating. "Your Honor, this case is about a betrayal of trust in every sense of the word." She outlined the facts with surgical clarity. Harold Monroe created a trust for his grandchildren's education. Margaret Monroe was appointed temporary trustee. Within months of Harold's death, Margaret removed one beneficiary, spent 97% of the funds on personal expenses, and concealed these actions from the other beneficiaries' guardians. Emily paused, letting the words sink in. This is not a family disagreement. This is fraud. And we have the evidence to prove it. The documentary evidence came next. Emily presented each document methodically, building her case like a brick wall. The original trust with all 3 beneficiaries listed. The amended trust with Ethan's name removed. Harold's handwritten notes explicitly including Ethan. Bank statements showing personal expenditures. Contractor invoices matching trust withdrawals. Vehicle registration in Margaret's personal name. Each document was entered into evidence, each one another nail in Margaret's coffin. Gerald objected occasionally. Hearsay. Relevance. Improper foundation. Judge Thornton overruled most of them. The paper trail was damning and undeniable. Emily called Victoria Monroe to the stand. Victoria walked past her mother without looking at her, her face pale but determined. She was sworn in and took her seat. Emily approached. "Ms. Monroe, did you witness the amendment to the Harold Monroe Educational Trust?" "Yes. Can you describe the circumstances?" Victoria took a breath. My mother presented documents for me to sign. She said it was routine paperwork. She told me not to read it, just to sign and trust her. Did you read it? No. I trusted my mother. Emily let the silence stretch. Do you regret that now? Victoria looked at Margaret for the first time since taking the stand. More than I can say. Gerald's cross-examination tried to paint Victoria as a disgruntled daughter seeking revenge. It did not land. Her testimony was too specific, too painful to be manufactured. When she stepped down, her eyes met mine briefly. A small nod of solidarity. We were in this together now. Emily addressed the judge. Your Honor, I would like to introduce audio recordings made by Harold Monroe before his death. Gerald objected immediately. These recordings were made without my client's knowledge. Emily's response was calm. Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state. Harold Monroe was a party to these conversations. The recordings are admissible. Judge Thornton considered for a moment. Objection overruled. You may proceed. Emily set up the audio system. The courtroom went quiet. Then Harold's voice filled the room, thin and weak but unmistakably clear. I want to make sure Ethan is included in everything. Margaret's recorded voice responded, sharp and dismissive. Harold, he is not even Daniel's biological child. Harold again. That does not matter to me. Margaret's words cut through the courtroom. It matters to the family legacy. We cannot dilute the Monroe name with people who do not belong. Harold's response was firm. With what, Margaret? With love? With a child who needs us? The recording ended. Judge Thornton's expression was unreadable, but she made a note on her pad. I watched Margaret. White as paper. Gerald was scribbling furiously. Emily spoke again. One more recording, Your Honor. She played the final file. Harold's voice, weaker now. I know what you are planning, Margaret. After I am gone, Margaret's dismissive laugh. You are imagining things. The medication is affecting your mind. Harold was not deterred. I am dying, not stupid. I have seen how you treat that boy. I have seen how you treat anyone who does not serve your purpose. A pause. Then Margaret's voice, cold and final. Then I suppose it is good you will not be around to see it. The recording ended. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Judge Thornton removed her glasses and looked directly at Margaret. Margaret stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, hands trembling in her lap. Then Emily played the video. Harold's face appeared on a screen, mounted on the courtroom wall. His voice explaining Margaret's expected betrayal. His messages to Daniel, to me, to Ethan. When he said family is not who you are born to, it is who shows up for you, I heard someone in the gallery sob. It might have been Robert. Gerald called Margaret to testify in her own defense. She walked to the stand slowly, the confident stride from the deposition completely gone. She was sworn in and sat down, her hands folded in her lap. Gerald led her through prepared testimony. She was protecting the family's interests. Harold was confused in his final months. The amendments were necessary corrections. The expenditures were legitimate trust business. Her voice was controlled, rehearsed, but her eyes kept darting to the evidence folders on Emily's table. Emily approached for cross-examination. Mrs. Monroe, you testified that Harold was confused, but he managed to make detailed recordings, write clear notes, and establish a secondary trust with specific provisions. Does that sound confused to you? Margaret's answer came too quickly. He had good days and bad days. Emily nodded. These recordings span several weeks. A lot of good days. Margaret did not respond. Emily continued. You also testified that you were protecting family interests. Whose interests were protected when you renovated your kitchen with trust funds? Margaret's voice tightened. The property needed maintenance. Your personal residence is not trust property, Mrs. Monroe. Emily stepped closer. Let me ask you directly. Why did you remove Ethan Wilson Monroe from the trust? Margaret's composure finally cracked. Because he is not a Monroe. Harold included him specifically. Harold was wrong. Emily's voice was soft, almost gentle. Wrong to love his grandson? Margaret's voice rose, something breaking loose inside her. That boy is not his grandson. He is not Daniel's son. He is not family. He is nothing but a reminder that my son married beneath him. She stopped, realizing what she had said. The courtroom was frozen. Judge Thornton leaned forward. Mrs. Monroe, are you stating that you removed a beneficiary based on personal prejudice rather than any legal or fiduciary concern? Margaret looked at her lawyer, then back at the judge. Her voice was barely audible. I was protecting the family. Judge Thornton's expression was ice. That is not what I asked. Margaret did not answer. Gerald's closing argument was brief and defensive, full of appeals to family privacy and reconciliation. It sounded hollow after what the courtroom had just witnessed. Emily's closing was surgical. Harold Monroe created a trust to protect his grandchildren. All of them. Margaret Monroe violated that trust legally, financially, and morally. She stole from children, she lied under oath. And when pressed, she revealed that her actions were driven not by fiduciary concern, but by prejudice against an 8-year-old boy who had done nothing wrong except exist. Emily paused. The evidence is clear. The remedy is straightforward. Remove her as trustee. Restore the stolen funds. And send a message that this court will not tolerate the abuse of power over children. Judge Thornton took several minutes to review her notes. The silence was agonizing. Finally, she spoke. I have reviewed the evidence carefully. The recordings, the documents, the testimony all point to a clear pattern of breach of fiduciary duty. She looked directly at Margaret. Mrs. Monroe, you were entrusted with your late father-in-law's legacy. You used that position to exclude a child from his rightful inheritance based on personal bias. You spent trust funds on personal luxuries. You concealed your actions from those entitled to know. And in this courtroom today, you revealed that your motivations had nothing to do with protecting anyone except yourself. Judge Thornton continued, I am ordering the following. Margaret Monroe is immediately removed as trustee of the Harold Monroe Educational Trust. All funds improperly withdrawn, totaling $447,582, are to be repaid to the trust with interest. Additional penalties of $50,000 for breach of fiduciary duty. Legal fees and court costs to be borne by the defendant. And this matter is being referred to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal fraud charges. She closed her folder. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Gerald was speaking urgently to Margaret, but she was not listening. She was staring at the table, motionless, defeated. Victoria walked past her mother toward the exit without a word, without a glance. Robert followed, stopping briefly to look at the woman he had been married to for 41 years. He shook his head slowly, then walked out. Daniel found me and wrapped his arms around me. It is over, he whispered. I held him tight. Not yet. But the hard part is done. Emily approached us. The repayment order is enforceable immediately. She will have to liquidate assets. Probably the house. I nodded. And the criminal referral? That is out of our hands now. But based on today, I would not want to be her. As we left the courtroom, I passed Margaret. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected to see hatred, defiance, the old Margaret who had controlled everyone around her for decades. Instead, I saw something I had not expected. Emptiness. Margaret Monroe, the woman who had commanded rooms and destroyed anyone who crossed her, had finally run out of moves. I did not gloat. I did not say anything. I just walked past her, into the sunlight, toward home, toward Ethan. The trial was over, but the healing had just begun. Late May arrived with the world turning green again. 2 months had passed since the trial. 2 months since Judge Thornton's gavel fell, and Margaret Monroe's empire crumbled. I stood at my kitchen window watching Ethan play in the backyard, chasing fireflies in the early evening light. He was laughing, really laughing, the kind of laughter that comes from somewhere deep and unguarded. The bruise on his face had been gone for months, but more importantly, so was the flinch. So was the careful way he used to move through the world, always bracing for the next blow. Daniel came into the kitchen with his phone, showing me a real estate listing. Margaret's house, the colonial with white columns, the perfectly maintained landscaping, the kitchen she had renovated with stolen money. It was for sale, listed at $650,000. She has to sell it, Daniel said, to pay the restitution. I looked at the photos, the gleaming kitchen, the formal dining room where Ethan had been slapped, the hallway lined with photographs that had never included my son. There is a word for this, I thought. Karma. But I did not feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Emily Carter's final accounting had arrived the previous week. The numbers were staggering. Total restitution ordered, $447,000 plus interest. Penalty for breach of fiduciary duty, $50,000. Legal fees, $38,000. Total Margaret owed, approximately $540,000. The house sale would cover most of it. Whatever was left, she would be paying for years. Ethan's trust fund was being restored, managed now by an independent trustee just as Harold had intended. His legacy finally protected. The Monroe family had reorganized itself around the crater Margaret left behind. Victoria called me weekly now, not as a sister-in-law but as something closer to a friend. We did not talk about Margaret much. We talked about our kids, our lives, the futures we were building. Robert had filed for divorce, and it would be finalized by fall. He was still in Maryland with his sister, rebuilding a life he should have started decades ago. First peace I have had in 40 years, he had texted me. I believed him. The extended family had split into camps. Some believed Margaret had been wronged, that I had destroyed the family for money and revenge. They stopped calling, stopped coming to events. I did not miss them. Others reached out quietly with apologies for not seeing what was happening, for staying silent when they should have spoken up. We should have known, one aunt said. We should have helped. I accepted the apologies but did not forget. When it mattered, they had chosen comfort over courage. That told me everything about who they really were. Victoria was rebuilding too. The second mortgage Margaret had forged was being contested in court, with criminal fraud charges pending. Victoria's marriage to Richard was strained, but surviving. He did not know, Victoria had told me, but he should have asked. We both should have. Emma, now 11, had started asking questions about why she did not see Grandma Margaret anymore. Victoria answered honestly but appropriately for her age. Grandma made some bad choices. She hurt people. And sometimes when people hurt you, you have to stay away from them. I admired how Victoria handled it. No demonizing, no excuses, just truth. Daniel had started therapy 2 weeks after the trial. Every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, he drove to Dr. Sarah Chen's office in downtown Harrisburg. At first, he was resistant. I am fine. I do not need to talk about my feelings. But now he came home from sessions quieter, softer, more present. He was learning words for things he had felt his whole life. Enmeshment, emotional manipulation, conditional love. The vocabulary of survival in a family that had taught him silence was safety. One night, he sat on the edge of our bed with his head in his hands. I keep thinking about all the years I let it happen, all the times I could have said something. I sat beside him. You were surviving. That is what children of controlling parents learn to do. But I am not a child anymore. I have not been for 20 years, and I still could not stand up to her. You did stand up to her. When it mattered most, you chose us. He looked at me, something raw in his eyes. What if I had never chosen? What if you had not forced the issue? I did not have an answer. Some questions are better left unasked. 3 weeks ago, Daniel had made a phone call he had been avoiding for 23 years. Marcus answered on the second ring. The conversation was awkward at first. Too much time and too much silence between them. But then Marcus said something that changed everything. I always hoped you would call. I never stopped hoping. They had talked 4 times since then. Marcus and Keisha had 3 kids now, teenagers almost grown. Cousins Ethan had never met. "I want to change that," Daniel told me. "I want Ethan to know his real family." "Then let us make it happen," I said. We were planning a trip to Chicago for the summer, a family reunion 23 years overdue. The biggest change was in Daniel's relationship with Ethan. He was present now in ways he had not been before. Homework help every evening, bedtime stories read in funny voices, weekend adventures to parks and museums and anywhere Ethan wanted to go. Last Saturday, they built a birdhouse together. It was crooked and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. Ethan kept it on his windowsill. "Dad made this with me," he told everyone who visited. Daniel teared up every time he heard it. Ethan had been seeing a child therapist too. Dr. Williams specialized in family trauma, and the sessions were play-based, gentle, effective. I did not know everything they discussed. That was Ethan's space, but I saw the results. He slept through the night now. No more nightmares about being pushed, about falling, about voices telling him he did not belong. He was louder than he used to be. He took up space, stated opinions, disagreed openly. Last week he argued with me about bedtime for 15 minutes. I let him win, not because he was right, but because watching him advocate for himself felt like victory. The question he used to ask, the one that haunted me, had stopped. Am I real family? One evening, I realized I could not remember the last time he had said it. I asked him gently, "Ethan, do you know you are part of this family? Really know it?" He looked at me like the question was strange. "Of course, Mom. You are my family. Dad is my family. That is how it works." So simple, so obvious to him now. The doubt Margaret had planted had withered and died. In its place, something stronger had grown. There was a new photo on the refrigerator, taken last month at a picnic in the park, me, Daniel, Ethan, all laughing at something off camera. Ethan had put it there himself. "That is us," he said when he taped it up. "That is our family." No one questioned it. No one needed to. A Tuesday afternoon in early June, Daniel was at therapy, Ethan at a friend's house. I was alone when the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole and my stomach dropped. Margaret stood on the front porch. She looked smaller than ever, thin and hunched, dressed in clothes that seemed too big for her frame. She was holding something, a small wrapped package. I opened the door but did not invite her in. "Margaret." Her voice was barely recognizable, hoarse and hesitant. "Jessica, please, I just want to talk. We do not have anything to talk about." She held up the package. "It is for Ethan, a birthday present. His birthday was last week, was it not?" I did not confirm or deny. "I just want to see him," she continued, "just for a minute, to apologize." I studied the woman in front of me. 6 months ago, she had commanded rooms, controlled lives, terrified her own children into submission. Now she was begging on a doorstep, clutching a gift no one had asked for. Her eyes filled with tears. "I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt people. But I am still his grandmother." My response was immediate. "No, you are not." She flinched. "Jessica, please, you slapped him. You called him nothing. You stole his inheritance. You spent 3 years treating him like he was invisible." My voice was steady, calm, absolute. "You had years to be his grandmother. You chose cruelty instead." Margaret's voice cracked. "I can change. People change. Maybe. But you do not get to practice that change on my son." I took the package from her hands. "I will give this to him, but you will not." Her face crumpled. "When can I see him?" I met her eyes. "You cannot. Not now, maybe not ever. You are punishing me." "No, I am protecting him. There is a difference." I stepped back. "Goodbye, Margaret." I closed the door. Through the wood, I could hear her crying on the porch. I did not open it again. I stood in my hallway, in my home, and let her grief wash over me without touching me. Some people deserved second chances. Some people had used up all their chances long ago. Margaret Monroe had made her choices. These were the consequences. After she left, I sat with the small package. I opened it carefully. Inside was a children's book about families. The inscription read, "To Ethan. Family is everything. Love, Grandma Margaret." I stared at the words for a long time. Even now, even after everything, she did not understand. Family was not everything. Family was only worth what it gave. Love, safety, acceptance. Margaret had given none of those things. And now she wondered why she was outside looking in. I considered throwing the book away. Instead, I put it in a box in the closet. Maybe someday when Ethan was older he would want to know. Maybe he would want to understand the grandmother who could have loved him and chose not to. Or maybe he would never ask. Either way, the choice would be his. Not Margaret's. Not anymore. Daniel came home from therapy, saw something in my face. "What happened?" "Your mother came by." He went still. "What did she want?" "To see Ethan. To apologize. And?" I said no. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, good. He did not ask if I had been too harsh. He did not suggest we reconsider. He trusted my judgment. That trust was new, hard-won, precious. I reached for his hand. "How was therapy?" He almost smiled. "Progress. Slow, but progress. That is all we can ask for." That night, the three of us ate dinner together. Nothing special. Spaghetti, salad, garlic bread. Ethan talked about his day, a friend's new puppy, a math test he had aced, a book he was reading about dragons, normal things, child things, the conversation Margaret would never be part of. I tucked Ethan in, same as every night. He was holding a stuffed bear, one Harold had given him before he died. "Mom, yeah, baby, I am happy." The words were simple, but they hit me like a wave. "I am happy too, sweetheart." He smiled, closed his eyes. I watched him for a long moment. Then I turned off the light. Later, I stood at the kitchen window again. The backyard was dark now, fireflies blinking in the shadows. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Mom is moving." She found an apartment across town. Small, no yard. I read it twice. The colonial house with white columns, gone. The matriarch's throne, dissolved. Margaret Monroe, downsized to a small apartment, alone. Justice was not always loud. Sometimes it was quiet. A slow fade from power to nothing. I did not respond to the text. I just stood in my kitchen, in my home, with my family asleep upstairs. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely at peace. Thanksgiving morning, 1 year to the day since everything changed. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter drifting up from downstairs. For a moment I lay still in bed, just listening. Daniel's voice, warm and teasing. Ethan's giggle, high and bright. The clatter of pans and the sizzle of something cooking. This is what peace sounds like, I thought. This is what we fought for. 1 year ago, I woke up dreading the day. Margaret's house, the tension, the careful navigation of Ethan through hostile territory. The constant vigilance, the smile that never quite reached my eyes. Now I woke in my own home, preparing to host my own Thanksgiving. No eggshells to walk on, no performances to give. Just family, the real kind. I came downstairs to find the kitchen in controlled chaos. Daniel was standing over the stove, attempting to baste a turkey that was definitely larger than he had expected. It was the first turkey he had ever cooked, and he was treating it like a military operation. Ethan was helping by eating raw vegetables meant for the salad, 1 carrot stick at a time. The dining table was visible through the doorway, set for 12 people. More people than we had ever hosted. More family than I had ever expected to have. "Mom," Ethan spotted me and pointed accusingly at Daniel. Dad almost burned the rolls. Daniel protested without looking up from the turkey. "They are golden. That is different from burned." I laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. "Let me see these golden rolls." The rolls were fine, maybe a little dark on the edges, but fine. Daniel had been cooking since 5 in the morning, determined to make this day perfect. I put my hand on his shoulder. You are doing great." He smiled, some of the tension leaving his face. "I have no idea what I am doing. Neither do I, but we are figuring it out together." The doorbell rang at 2:00. First to arrive were Victoria, Richard, and Emma. Emma was 11 now, taller than I remembered, carrying a pie she had helped bake. She ran to hug Ethan the moment she saw him. Cousins who had become friends over the past year, connected now by something stronger than blood. Victoria embraced me in the doorway. "The house smells amazing." I laughed. "Daniel has been cooking since dawn. I am afraid to look in the kitchen." She grinned. "At least he is trying." Richard still thinks cooking means ordering takeout. The easy warmth between us still surprised me sometimes. We had been strangers a year ago, separated by Margaret's manipulation and our own fear. Now Victoria was the sister I had never had. We talked on the phone every week. Our kids played together. We were building something new on the ruins of what Margaret had destroyed. Robert arrived next, alone, carrying flowers. He looked healthier than I had ever seen him. The divorce had been finalized in October, and the weight of 41 years with Margaret had finally lifted from his shoulders. "For the hostess," he said, handing me the bouquet. "You did not have to. I wanted to. This is the first Thanksgiving in 40 years I am actually looking forward to." He found Daniel in the kitchen, and I watched them through the doorway. Father and son, learning how to be family without Margaret between them. The doorbell rang again. I opened it to faces I had only seen on video calls until now. Marcus Monroe, Daniel's brother, estranged for 23 years. His wife Keisha, warm smile and firm handshake. Their 3 teenagers. Maya, 17, poised and curious. James, 15, already taller than his father. Dion, 13, bouncing on his heels with barely contained energy. Marcus hugged me like we had known each other forever. "Jessica, thank you for giving my brother back to me." Daniel appeared behind me, and the brothers embraced. It was not the first time they had hugged since reconnecting. They had visited twice over the summer, calls every week, years of silence finally broken. But it still made my eyes sting to watch them. 23 years of separation, ended because someone finally stood up to Margaret. Ethan hung back, suddenly shy. He had been excited about meeting his new cousins for weeks, but now that they were here, uncertainty had crept in. Dion noticed. "Hey, you are Ethan, right? Dad says you like video games." Ethan nodded cautiously. "Cool. Want to show me your setup?" They disappeared upstairs together, instant friends. Keisha watched them go and turned to me. "He has been asking about the cousin in Pennsylvania for months. Ethan, too. He is just nervous. Kids figure it out faster than adults do." 4:00 arrived, and everyone gathered in the dining room. 12 chairs, 12 place settings, 12 people who had chosen to be family. I looked around the table at what we had built. Daniel at one end, carving the turkey that was slightly lopsided but perfectly cooked. Marcus and Keisha across from Victoria and Richard. Robert between his 2 sons, still learning how to be a father to both of them after all these years. And at the far end, the kids section. Emma, Maya, James, Dion, and Ethan clustered together, already sharing inside jokes and stolen glances. 1 year ago, Ethan sat alone at a separate table in Margaret's house. Excluded, invisible, unwanted. Now he was surrounded by cousins who wanted him there. Cousins who had traveled from Chicago just to meet him. Cousins who were already planning summer visits and video game tournaments and all the things family was supposed to share. Before anyone took a bite, Daniel stood. "I want to say something, if that is okay." The table quieted. Daniel looked around at all of us, his brother, his father, his son, his wife. His voice was thick with emotion. "A year ago, I almost lost all of you, because I was too afraid to do the right thing." He paused, swallowing hard. "I am grateful for second chances, and for the people at this table who gave me one." He raised his glass. "To family, the real kind." "To family," everyone echoed. Ethan raised his apple juice, solemn and proud. Glasses clinked, and the meal began. I noticed there was no 13th chair, no place set for Margaret, no elephant in the room. Her absence was not felt as loss, it was felt as peace. I knew where she was. That small apartment across town, alone, probably eating takeout, probably still convinced she was the victim in all of this. For a moment I felt something, not pity, not satisfaction, just acknowledgement. Margaret had made her choices. These were the consequences. And this table, full of laughter and food and love, was the result of different choices, better ones. Over dinner, stories flowed like wine. Marcus told tales of Daniel as a kid, the time he tried to build a treehouse and got stuck in it for 3 hours. Victoria revealed that Margaret once made her re-iron her prom dress 3 times because the creases were not perfect enough. Robert shared something he had never told anyone. Harold used to sneak me cigars on the back porch. Margaret hated them. That is why we did it. The laughter came easy, but so did the harder truths. We were not pretending the past had not happened. We were building something new on top of its rubble. Keisha leaned over to me during dessert. You know, when Marcus told me everything that happened, I expected to come here and find a war zone. And instead I found a family that figured out what mattered. She gestured toward the kids' end of the table where Ethan was demonstrating something on his phone while Dion watched, fascinated. Look at them. They do not even know they were supposed to be strangers. I watched my son, confident and laughing and belonging. That is the whole point, I said. They were never supposed to be strangers. Someone just made them think they were. After dinner, I found Daniel and Marcus on the back porch. They were standing side by side, looking out at the darkening yard, not talking. But the silence was not awkward. It was comfortable. The silence of people who have finally found their way back to each other. I hung back, not wanting to intrude. Marcus's voice carried in the evening air. I missed you, man. All those years. Daniel's response was quiet. I should have called sooner. You called when you could. That is what matters. Daniel paused. Grandpa would have loved this, all of us together. Marcus nodded. He is here, in every choice we are making to be different. I slipped back inside, leaving them to their moment. Some healing happened in public. Some happened in the quiet. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the dishes were done, I tucked Ethan into bed. He was exhausted from a day of running around with his new cousins, but his eyes were bright, his mind still buzzing. Mom? Yeah, baby. What does family mean? I sat on the edge of his bed, taking a moment to find the right words. 1 year ago, he had asked me if he was real family. The doubt in his voice had nearly broken me. Now he was asking something different. Not whether he belonged, but what belonging meant. Family, I said slowly, is who shows up for you. Not because they have to, because they choose to. Ethan considered this. Like how Uncle Marcus came all the way from Chicago? Exactly like that. And how Dad learned to make turkey even though it was kind of ugly? I laughed. Yes. Especially that. Ethan was quiet for a moment. And family is who you protect, right? Even when it is hard. My heart swelled. Where did you learn that? He shrugged like it was obvious. From you. I pulled him into a hug and held him tight. That is right, baby. Family is who you protect, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. He hugged me back, then yawned. Mom, I am happy. The words were simple, but they hit me like a wave. I am happy too, sweetheart. Me too. He smiled and closed his eyes. I watched him for a long moment. This boy who had once doubted he belonged anywhere, now certain of his place in the world. Then I turned off the light. The house was quiet. Daniel had gone to bed, and I sat alone at the kitchen table with a cup of tea cooling in my hands. I thought about the year that had just passed. The slap, the courtroom, the evidence, the trial. Margaret's face when the gavel fell. The door closing on a woman who chose control over love. I thought about what I had almost lost. My son's confidence, my husband's presence, my own peace. and I thought about what I had gained instead. Victoria's friendship, Robert's courage, Marcus's return. A table full of people who had chosen each other. On the refrigerator, Ethan's photo of our family still hung in its place of honor. Below it, tucked into the frame, was a small picture I had added last month. Harold Monroe holding a young Daniel on his lap, both of them laughing at something off camera. Family is not who you are born to, Harold's voice echoed in my memory. It is who shows up for you. He had shown up, even after death, even through recordings and letters and a secret trust. He had shown up because love was more important than blood. That was his real legacy. Not money, not property. Just the simple truth that children deserve protection. All children, regardless of where they came from. I finished my tea and washed the cup. I turned off the kitchen light and paused at the bottom of the stairs. Upstairs, my son slept safely. Down the hall, my husband dreamed of tree houses and brothers and second chances. This was what I had fought for. This was what I had won. Not revenge, though justice had been served. Not money, though restitution had been made. Just this. A home where my child knew he belonged. That was everything. That was enough. The next morning, I woke to leftover turkey sandwiches and a quiet house. Daniel brought me coffee in bed, something he had started doing on weekend mornings. Sleep okay? Best sleep I have had in years. He sat beside me. Same. Through the window, the November sun was bright. A new day, a new year ahead. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Holidays are different now, smaller in some ways. The guest list is shorter than it used to be, but bigger in all the ways that matter. Every person present actually wants to be there. We are building new traditions. Crooked turkeys and too loud kids and imperfect, beautiful chaos. Ethan does not flinch anymore. He takes up space. He laughs without checking the room first. So do I. We lost people who were never really family. We kept the ones who showed up when it mattered. And that, in the end, is everything. Some stories end with the villain losing everything. This one does too. Margaret lost her house, her husband, her children, her grandchildren. Everything she tried so hard to control slipped through her fingers the moment she raised her hand against a child. But this story is not really about her. It is about a boy who learned he belonged, a husband who found his courage, a family that chose love over silence. If this story stayed with you, if you saw pieces of your own journey in these words, I hope you carry one thing forward. It is never too late to protect someone who needs you, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. Thank you for being here until the end. Your time means everything to me. If you would like more stories like this, stories about standing up, starting over, and finding your people, please subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. And if this one touched your heart, leave a comment below. Tell me about the family you have chosen, the boundaries you have built, or the person you protected when no one else would. Because every story shared is proof that we are not alone, and we never were. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.